The creation chessboard? When Han Fei saw the power that the creation chess card could show, although he had high expectations for this weapon, he still felt that he had underestimated the value of this weapon. For example, the Blood Sky Blade's strongest blow was Blade Death, which was to exchange for 10 times the combat power with the destruction of the Blood Sky Blade. This way, every time he used it, he would get a high-quality nature spiritual treasure level treasure. But the dragon-slaying trap of the creation chessboard could unleash 10 times the power of a chess piece, which meant that the dragon-slaying trap could unleash 10 times the power of a god. Han Fei didn't dare to imagine how unbelievable this power was. Even the power of a killing trap could unleash 3 times the power of a god, which was unbelievable. Compared to the Blood Heaven Blade, it was like one was in the heavens and the other was in the underworld. If an ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure was extremely powerful and much stronger than a high-quality nature spiritual treasure, then a one-time ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure was a level stronger than an ultra-quality nature spiritual treasure. In terms of level, if this wasn't a one-time use weapon, it could definitely be ranked as a supreme nature treasure or even surpass it. Therefore, when Han Fei saw the attributes of the creation chessboard, he couldn't help but be shocked. Having this creation chessboard was actually equivalent to having the power to kill gods. Han Fei looked solemn. He bowed slightly to the gods. Thank you for your kindness, seniors. I will definitely let this creation chessboard fulfill its value. Chen Lingsu said indifferently, I've given it to you. It's up to you how you use it. Anyway, since we're going to be reincarnated, many things and residual power are useless. In that case, we'll just inject them all into this creation chessboard. You can use it to kill some traitors of all races in the future, such as the eternal race. Han Fei nodded slightly and said calmly after putting away the creation chessboard, seniors, if I've guessed right, when the path of reincarnation opens, both the Sea Realm and the Sea of Stars will be in turmoil. This era might not be very good, but if you can awaken your memories after reincarnation, remember the time node of 10,000 years later. At that time, I'm afraid the ominous might have returned. How could everyone not know the significance of these 10,000 years? Someone said, to be honest, we are already very satisfied that the current Sea Realm can resist the ominous for 10,000 years. A god smiled and said, in 10,000 years, we should still have a chance to fight. A god said, there's no time to lose. Little friend Han Fei, when can the path of reincarnation open? Now. Now? The gods were stunned. So it's up to you whether the path of reincarnation can be opened or not? Han Fei said, seniors, please guard me. With a thought from Han Fei, the green jade stone bridge suddenly appeared in front of the gods. Huh? Well. Is this the path of reincarnation? Am I seeing things? The path of reincarnation has always been with little friend Han Fei. Although the gods didn't know the path of reincarnation, they could roughly guess it, so at this moment, they all looked shocked. Of course, there was also ecstasy. If that was the case, wouldn't they be able to enter the cycle of reincarnation immediately? Chen Lingsu held her long bow and said indifferently, everyone, this matter should be a secret for us. Before we reincarnate, we have to cut off this memory. After all, if anything happens after the reincarnation, we can't expose Han Fei. A god echoed, that's right. The path of reincarnation is with one person. If The eternal race finds out about this, the consequences will be disastrous. A god said solemnly, before entering the path of reincarnation, let's cut off this memory one by one. Seconded. Agreed. Han Fei didn't really care about this. After reincarnation, it would take them thousands of years for them to awaken their memories. Once they awakened and didn't grow up, they probably wouldn't be too high profile. Furthermore, as soon as the path of reincarnation opened, not only the gods in front of him entered the cycle of reincarnation. This was because after someone died, only part of their soul returned to the soul sea, and some entered a certain unknown place on the path of reincarnation. God knew how many remnant souls and divine thoughts had been accumulated over the endless years. Therefore, among so many people, who knew where to find these gods? Han Fei stepped onto the green jade stone bridge. If he wanted to open the door of life and death, he had to open the door of rebirth first. Since he had already made a decision, he no longer hesitated. He strode to the door of rebirth and looked at the words, "The day the door of rebirth opens is the time when the ominous returns," sealed on it. Han Fei reached out and immediately tore off the seal. This was not a powerful seal. It only served as a warning, so Han Fei didn't find it difficult to remove the seal. When the seal was completely removed, Han Fei reached out and pressed on the door of rebirth, pushing it with a huge force. Open. Buzz. On the door of rebirth, brilliance bloomed, and the relief patterns on the door seemed to come back to life. Ka ka ka. As the door of rebirth opened, what Han Fei saw was a vast starry sky with flashing stars. The dense gravel-like stars seemed to be right in front of his eyes, but also seemed to be far away. Han Fei had a feeling that every flashing star was a reincarnation position, as if it was waiting for the corresponding soul body to enter this place. On Han Fei's side, he didn't feel anything different. He only felt that after the door of rebirth opened, there was a faint suction force. The suction force was very small, as if telling him to walk here. However, although Han Fei didn't feel anything, in the sea of stars, inexplicable roars began to come from the countless ominous mists. At the front line, in an endless ominous mist, a voice came. Han Fei had only lifted the seal of the door of rebirth, but he seemed to have lifted some shackles that bound the ominous. With buzzing sounds and roars, a large number of ominous creatures rushed out of the ominous mist. On the front line, a magnificent city stood, which was a natural chasm to stop the ominous. Many strong masters came out of seclusion. But what was faster than them were countless time cocoons. There seemed to be creatures in the cocoons that were stirring and about to break out. Someone on the front line was shocked. The time resurrection technique? Has the time temple taken action? What's going on? There are so many time cocoons. Is the time temple going to personally suppress the ominous? No, look at the ominous mist. Roar, roar. One world-ending level war beast after another rushed out of the ominous mist. There were as many as huge waves in the sea. Although they were composed of drops of water, you couldn't count how many drops of water there were. In the billions of time cocoons, big cocoons broke open from time to time, and ancient creatures surged out of the cocoons, covering the sky and the earth. Someone was shocked and swallowed with difficulty. It seems that something big has happened. Soul Sea, Bloodline Divine Tree. In the Sea of Stars, every time a creature was born, the corresponding bloodline on the Bloodline Divine Tree would flash. In the vast Sea of Stars, countless creatures were born at all times. Therefore, the bloodline divine tree was shining with the light of bloodline. At all times like flashing stars without stopping. But suddenly, the bloodline divine tree dimmed. There was not a flash on the tree, and the scene of stars flashing could no longer be seen. Buzz. All of a sudden, figures appeared in front of the bloodline divine tree one after another. What's going on? Why is the bloodline divine tree no longer flashing? Is there something wrong with the bloodline divine tree? Greetings, Soul Master. This person exuded a power that even the gods didn't dare to look at. He slowly said, "This day has finally come. The path of reincarnation has been opened." What? The path of reincarnation? How is it possible? The path of reincarnation has disappeared for so long. How can it still open? Didn't the path of reincarnation disappear since the primordial era? How can it be? If the path of reincarnation opens, won't the bloodline divine tree be useless? No, we can't let the path of reincarnation open. Once this path is opened, all races will definitely fall out with us. Besides, those great monarchs will no longer have any scruples. They will probably use this opportunity to become gods. The Soul Master slowly said, "The path of reincarnation has opened and the ominous has returned. The myriad races don't have the time to deal with the eternal race. Pass down my order to find out who opened the path of reincarnation." However, as soon as the Soul Master said so, he reached out and grabbed, and the souls of the two god-level powerhouses near him shattered. The vitality in these two people's bodies was completely severed, and this place was immediately covered in a blood-colored halo. In the Soul Sea, a death knell sounded. The two gods were killed so easily, which shocked the surrounding gods. The mysterious powerhouse reached out and grabbed, and two broken souls appeared in front of him. He threw out 2 drops of blood that emitted a bloody light and said indifferently, "The two of you, go to the path of reincarnation and see if you can find any clues on the path of reincarnation. After you reincarnate and awaken your memories, temporarily integrate into the myriad races." These 2 divine souls trembled, not daring to disobey. As the mysterious powerhouse let go, the 2 of them left the Soul Sea and disappeared into the vast sea of stars. Han Fei didn't know what happened in the sea of stars, let alone that the eternal race had already begun to search for him. At this moment, the door of rebirth had been opened, but there was still no reaction. He probably needed to open the door of life and death, too. Compared to the silence of the door of rebirth, Han Fei knew that there would definitely be a different reaction behind the door of life and death. When he came to the door of life and death, the seal on the door, "If you want to open the door of life and death, open the door of rebirth first," was gone. Han Fei took a deep breath and pushed with one hand, and a huge force surged. Buzz. A dazzling white light shone in through the crack of the door. The moment the white light poured out, it shone on the ground and burned with raging flames. Hellfire? Han Fei was shocked. He looked at the words on the door of life and death. When a person dies, he is relieved of all burdens. The hellfire burns his body and eliminates evil. He suddenly understood something. He looked back, only to see that the entire road seemed to be instantly ignited by flames, full of hellfire. However, to Han Fei's surprise, he couldn't feel the burning of the hellfire. Was it because the path of reincarnation was his? Han Fei stared at the door of life and death for a while. He had no idea what was behind the dazzling white light, because he couldn't see it at all. Han Fei tried to touch the white light behind the door of life and death, wondering if he could walk out of here to take a look. However, as soon as his palm touched the white light, it was almost burnt. There were only bones left in one hand, and even the bones were full of cracks. Huh? I can't walk it? In his palm, vitality surged, and flesh and blood intertwined. In the blink of an eye, Han Fei's palm returned to normal, but he also gave up the idea of leaving through the door of life and death. Buzz. At this moment, Han Fei felt the ground began to tremble slightly. Then, he saw that the door of life and death began to grow larger and larger. Not only that, but the hellfire began to burn to both sides with a swish, and the road under his feet no longer had hellfire, as if it had turned into a pavement. In addition, the door of life and death began to gradually leave. This road seemed to be stretched longer and longer. Buzz. Suddenly, Han Fei felt the vibration of the green jade bridge itself. When he looked back, he saw a new pair of couplets appear on the pillars on both sides of the green jade bridge. This life is like the moon in the water, and the next life is like a flower in the mist. The couplets meant literally nothing. However, Han Fei seemed to realize something and quickly came to the green jade bridge. Then, he saw that the river under the bridge began to flow. When the river began to flow, Han Fei clearly felt that time was running. Yes, on the path of reincarnation, time flowed faster. In the past, when he entered the path of reincarnation, he stayed on the road for a long time, but it only took him a moment outside. Many times, he even felt that time on the path of reincarnation froze. Now, time began to accelerate, and the flow speed was comparable to the outside world. Could it be that the time on the path of reincarnation should have been the same as the outside world? Swish. While Han Fei was thinking about this time problem, suddenly, a figure appeared in Han Fei's vision. Someone came? Han Fei immediately felt refreshed. It was a young man. On the green robe he was wearing, laws were circulating, and there were remnants of divinity. It was obvious that he was quite extraordinary. This young man's soul carried divinity, which meant that this person was undoubtedly a god. His true strength far exceeded his, so he couldn't clearly judge the other party's specific realm. However, although this young man's strength far exceeded his, Han Fei felt that at this moment, he didn't seem to be able to use his strength. He seemed to have relied on the green robe to come to the green jade stone bridge so quickly. There was still a trace of confusion and dullness in the young man's eyes. It wasn't until he saw Han Fei standing on the bridge that a trace of clarity slowly appeared in his eyes. The two of them looked at each other for a long time. Law surged on the young man's green robe and enveloped him. The latter glanced at the words on the green jade stone bridge and slowly said, "I seem to have died. Where is this?" But before the young man could continue to ask, the laws and divinity that emerged from his green clothes were actually attracted by the river under the green jade stone bridge. As the divinity gradually disappeared, Han Fei saw that the young man's pupils seemed to gradually become dull again. Buzz. Han Fei felt refreshed. The power of the young man's law was drawn into the river. Didn't this mean that a new law had appeared in the river? If everyone who walked the path of reincarnation would leave the power of laws behind when crossing the green jade stone bridge, wouldn't he have infinite power of laws? Han Fei was overjoyed. In this way, he could superimpose countless laws in an extremely short period of time. Hey! Can you hear me? Suppressing the urge to take a bath in the river immediately, Han Fei asked tentatively, but he didn't get a response. The young man's eyes seemed to struggle for a moment, but then his eyes became glassy again. The young man strode onto the green jade stone bridge. The moment he walked onto the green jade stone bridge, Han Fei saw that a large amount of law power was dissipating from his body. Han Fei raised his eyebrows and looked under the bridge. In the slowly flowing river, the young man's figure dissipated a massive amount of laws, which were far 10 times, 100 times, or 1,000 times more than the laws he was dissipating now. Huh? Han Fei was surprised. The laws in this person's body were being absorbed by the river. Han Fei observed this person when he walked past him and was about to get off the bridge. Han Fei could clearly feel that the power of his green robe was getting weaker and weaker, as if it was gradually turning into ordinary clothes. When he walked down the green jade stone bridge, Han Fei felt that this person had become an ordinary person. That's not right. Han Fei walked around the man and saw that there was a trace of divinity between his eyebrows. This trace of divinity seemed to be very obscure and wasn't absorbed by the river. This doesn't seem right. As soon as I said the words "road of reincarnation," the clarity in this person's eyes disappeared. Is the word "road of reincarnation" magical, or is there something else? Han Fei still wanted to follow this person to continue studying. However, at this moment, he saw another man in a Dao robe come under the bridge with a page engraved with talismans. The scroll was shining. There was also a trace of clarity in this person's eyes. After seeing the green jade stone bridge, this person's expression changed slightly. The Dao scroll in his hand turned into divine patterns that surrounded his body. Then, he stepped on the green jade stone bridge. In the reflection of the river, the scroll's brilliance was gradually absorbed and slowly dimmed. Seeing this, Han Fei realized that the green robe of the last person and the Dao scroll in the hands of this person must both be extraordinary. These two things contained a large amount of the power of laws, protecting a trace of their divinity, allowing them to cross the green jade stone bridge safely. Another powerhouse, far exceeding my strength. Han Fei frowned slightly. It seems that these gods, or even stronger powerhouses, were prepared at the moment of their death. Han Fei discovered that the people on the path of reincarnation shouldn't be sober, but the treasures of these two people made them temporarily retain their consciousness and even be able to speak. However, most of their divinities and law powers had been absorbed by the river. Even with such extraordinary treasures, they could only barely leave a trace of divinity. Han Fei could imagine that once these people entered the reincarnation cycle and successfully reincarnated, this wisp of divinity would be their magic weapon to quickly rise. When the man saw Han Fei standing under the bridge and looking at him, he paused and then nodded at Han Fei without saying anything. Even when he walked down the green jade stone bridge, the Dao scroll in his hand hadn't dissipated, but its power seemed to have been greatly reduced. The man slowly said, "Thank you." Just as this person was about to pass Han Fei suddenly said, "Cut off the memories of this place." The man hesitated for a moment and said, "Okay." Han Fei watched the man cut off this part of memory. After severing this memory, his pupils became slightly glazed. Han Fei didn't continue to stop him and let him continue forward. Before the two of them reached the door of rebirth, more people arrived, more than one. One after another, 7 or 8 people came. Good Lord, they are all above gods. Han Fei saw that each of them seemed to have a way to protect a wisp of his divinity. However, most of these 7 or 8 people, like the first person, could only barely keep a wisp of divinity. But the second man in the Tao robe was different. He was almost reincarnated, with the Tao scroll and all his memories. The reason why he asked him to cut off the memories of this place was actually to cut off the memories of him seeing him. After a while, when more than 30 people boarded the bridge, the first person to cross the green jade stone bridge had already reached the door of rebirth. After that person crossed the door of rebirth, the stars in the vast sea of stars instantly shone and erupted with unparalleled light. Han Fei saw the man throw himself into a certain star with a swish, and then the star dimmed. I see. Every time someone enters the cycle of reincarnation, a star will be extinguished. However, how many people can use up this vast star sea? Han Fei didn't pay attention to the door of rebirth anymore. They walked their own path. It didn't matter even if they entered the cycle of reincarnation with divinities. Perhaps they would grow up faster in the future this way. If they could, Han Fei didn't even mind them bringing power and spiritual treasures into the cycle of reincarnation. Only in this way could they rise quickly. Outside, the graveyard of gods. The moment the path of reincarnation opened, Chen Lingsu and the others were tempted. Because they were very close to the path of reincarnation, which was right in front of their eyes, many gods couldn't help but be led into the path of reincarnation. These gods had yearned for it for too long and didn't want to resist this temptation at all. Someone said, "Everyone, I'm leaving first. When my memories recover, let's meet again and drink and chat happily." With that, this person's remnant soul flew to the path of reincarnation. Someone laughed. "Everyone, I'm leaving too. There's nothing else to say. It's already a great opportunity for us to live another life. I'm leaving." Someone smiled. The graveyard of gods. I really look forward to seeing my own graveyard after reincarnation. Someone sneered. What's there to see? It's just some spiritual treasures. Let's go. Let's go together. The gods entered the path of reincarnation one after another. In the end, when only Chen Lingsu was left here, she branded a line of words on her origin star. I've entered the reincarnation and I'll be waiting for you. After that, Chen Lingsu also entered the path of reincarnation. On the path of reincarnation, Han Fei came to the door of life and death after watching the situation on the door of rebirth. He was shocked to find that countless souls of various colors were pouring in from the door of life and death. The road here was already full of various creatures. There were huge beasts with huge bodies, azure dragons swimming in the void, huge rocks, ancient demonic bulls with heavy steps, human beings, sea demons, insect races, demon plants, humanoids, and countless other races. The teams of these big shots directly stretched this road very long. If this path was considered the main path, then on both sides of this path, countless souls were being burned by hellfire, wailing and howling. When they tried to step onto the main path, they would be blocked by an invisible force and couldn't cross at all. Han Fei saw that some people were completely annihilated by the hellfire, and some people's souls were becoming pure. When their souls were no longer contaminated by the hellfire, these souls could step onto the main path from the hellfire. However, after they entered the main road, they couldn't cut in line. The creatures walking in the middle of the main road had no intention of letting them cut in line at all, so they formed a team and could only follow the side of the central queue. Therefore, on the main road, there were soon 3 queues walking side by side. Because people walked out of the hellfire every moment, the 2 new queues were filled with various souls in the blink of an eye. Some souls wanted to come out, but there was no place for them at all, so they could only wait in the hellfire eagerly. In addition, Hanfei also discovered a novel phenomenon, which was that some people on the main road didn't need to line up. Most of the strong masters with divinity still had some consciousness, different from those creatures that had already fallen into a daze. They would walk out of the line and quickly cross this road to the front of the green jade stone bridge. Therefore, there were roughly 3 kinds of creatures that came in from the door of life and death. The first was that the big shots didn't need to line up and had a certain level of self-awareness. One was creatures that could walk on the main path as soon as they came in. These creatures were at least monarchs. The last was the creatures of the other stages. Their strength was uneven and they needed to be burned by hellfire. As for why monarchs could walk on the main path without being burned by hellfire, Hanfei discovered that the moment they passed through the door of rebirth, white flames would burn on their bodies for a moment. This white flame was different from hellfire. It was more like a purifying fire. Hanfei suspected that it was caused by the white light of the door of life and death. Perhaps, behind the white light, there was a place he didn't know at all. Although the path of reincarnation was open now, Hanfei felt that he still didn't know enough about it. He had a feeling that the process of these creatures entering the cycle of reincarnation was too simple. At most, they would be burned by hellfire. Only those who had committed heinous crimes would be burned to death. Most people could still enter the cycle of reincarnation after experiencing hellfire. Hanfei rubbed his head and suddenly felt that something was missing on the path of reincarnation. If he could get the 10 yamas here. Hanfei only thought for a moment and couldn't help but laugh. If he wanted to get the 10 yamas here, wouldn't he have to take the entire immortal temple here? He wasn't that powerful. The death god was a dominator-level powerhouse. How could he give him the immortal temple that he had built with all his strength? Forget it, that's it for the time being. Anyway, after these creatures reincarnate, their ultimate fate is to fight the ominous. The path of reincarnation is only equivalent to a transit station. There's no need to make it so complicated for the time being. At this moment, Hanfei saw a figure rush out of the door of life and death. This figure didn't need to line up at all, but was walking quickly on the main road of the path of reincarnation. Is it Chen Lingsu? This soul body was Chen Lingsu. The other party clearly retained her consciousness. At present, among the souls of the powerhouses Hanfei had encountered, who didn't need to cut in line, there were no more than 5 who could do what Chen Lingsu did. Obviously, the strength of these people was probably not as simple as that of gods. Chen Lingsu could seriously injure a god with 1 arrow, so her strength was very likely to have reached the god-slaying level. In other words, the people he had just encountered were very likely all god-slaying level powerhouses. Chen Lingsu soon came to the green jade stone bridge. She gently raised her hand, and a butterfly appeared at her fingertips. Instantly, the butterfly flapped its wings, and a large amount of divine power enveloped Chen Lingsu. But then, Chen Lingsu gave up. She looked around. Hanfei, are you there? Chen Lingsu's own strength seemed to be suppressed, so she couldn't see the path of rebirth from the door of life and death at a glance. but as the master of the path of reincarnation. Han Fei could. Chen Lingsu suddenly called his name. Han Fei was stunned for a moment and replied, yes. Swish. Han Fei came to the front of the green jade stone bridge and couldn't help but wonder, Senior, is there anything else I can do for you? Chen Lingsu was not surprised to see Han Fei at all. Instead, she said bluntly, have you not completely mastered the path of reincarnation? Huh? Why do you say that? Chen Lingsu looked back at the long team and said, there are only 3 cues. How long will it take for all these creatures to reincarnate? Can't you expand the cues? Seeing that Han Fei scratched his head and looked confused, Chen Lingsu couldn't help but say, it seems that you don't know much about the path of reincarnation. If you control the path of reincarnation, you should have a way to expand and change the shape of the path of reincarnation. For example, the width, length, strength of the hellfire, and even the pressure on divinity and laws. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Oh? Senior, do you know how to master it? Chen Lingsu shook her head slightly. I don't know, but I know that someone once walked the path of reincarnation. It seems to be different from the current path of reincarnation. By the way, have you seen him? Chen Lingsu was naturally pointing at Li Daoi, whom she had been waiting for. However, Han Fei didn't feel any anomalies in the butterfly hairpin, so no one named Li Daoi had crossed the green jade stone bridge so far. Han Fei shook his head. Not yet, but there are still many strong masters queuing up to enter the cycle of reincarnation. Perhaps he is behind. Chen Lingsu frowned slightly. Do you mind if I stay here for a while? Han Fei looked at Chen Lingsu. Although she hadn't crossed the bridge yet, the power of laws on her body was also being absorbed by the river, but not as quickly as after she boarded the bridge. Han Fei said, Senior, even if I agree, I'm afraid you won't stay long. After your divinity and the power of laws are sucked dry, you will lose consciousness. Chen Lingsu shook her head slightly. Can't you give me the power to stay here? Han Fei's heart stirred. He didn't know that he had such an ability. However, after Chen Lingsu's reminder, Han Fei immediately tried to communicate with the green jade stone bridge. Unexpectedly, he really felt something different this time. There seemed to be some rules reflected in his mind. At that moment, he seemed to understand many operation rules of the path of reincarnation. The first thing Han Fei sensed was that the path of reincarnation had rules that suppressed all powers, divinity, and laws. Even if a god entered the path of reincarnation, he was just a pure soul waiting for reincarnation here. However, the suppression of the path of reincarnation wasn't absolute. For example, the power it used to suppress laws was to melt the laws, not to deprive them at once. Therefore, there were god-level powerhouses who could barely protect a wisp of divinity with some law treasures. As long as those law treasures could successfully support them to the path of rebirth, the wisp of divinity and memories would be preserved. Also, anyone who stepped into the cycle of reincarnation usually had no memories after reincarnation. Even if they preserved their memories, they would only be stored in the deepest part of their soul and needed to wait for the opportunity to awaken. This opportunity might be the occurrence of an event or reaching a certain level of strength. However, there was an exception, which was that some people could completely retain their memories and enter the reincarnation if they controlled a nature treasure level treasure or a law type treasure that was strong enough. Therefore, it could be seen from this that the path of reincarnation was very powerful, but it was not absolutely without loopholes. Furthermore, the path of reincarnation could indeed be long, short, wide, or narrow. He could adjust it according to his will. However, this required certain conditions, and the conditions were actually related to the number of laws he stacked. Huh? Is the path of reincarnation actually related to my own strength? Han Fei clearly felt that the path of reincarnation seemed to have other powers, but he didn't have the ability to activate them now. And now, the powers displayed by the path of reincarnation seemed to be only its basic powers. It turned out that he had only opened the path of reincarnation, but he couldn't control it yet, nor could he make changes in the rules. With a thought from Han Fei, the path of reincarnation was widening at a visible speed. As the path of reincarnation widened, the soul bodies that could only wait in the hellfire anxiously immediately rushed out. At first, the scene was a little chaotic, but in a moment, lines formed. In the end, a total of 391 cues appeared on the path of reincarnation, which meant that Han Fei had already stacked 391 laws. Han Fei was overjoyed. This speed was not bad. At this speed, when these creatures stepped on the green jade stone bridge, walked to the door of rebirth, and began to reincarnate, in a year, it would be enough for more than 10 billion creatures to enter the cycle of reincarnation. However, Chen Lingsu shook her head. Too few. How many creatures can enter the reincarnation cycle in 10,000 years with such few cues? Han Fei calculated with his fingers and frowned slightly. Chen Lingsu was right. Now there was a clear time flow on the path of reincarnation. At this speed, no more than 10 billion creatures could enter the cycle of reincarnation in a year, and only 100 trillion creatures could enter the cycle of reincarnation in 10,000 years. This number sounded quite exaggerated. However, this was the reincarnation of all the creatures of all the races. In the sea realm, there were more than trillions of creatures. And this was only the sea realm. What about the origin grounds in the Sea of Stars, or the various creatures that had been living in the Sea of Stars? Therefore, Chen Lingsu's words were true. Han Fei said, for the time being, I can only broaden the path of reincarnation so much. Senior, I can let you stay here, but you can't cross the bridge. Once you cross the bridge, there's no turning back. Chen Lingsu nodded slightly. Thank you. Go about your business. I'll just wait here for a while. When no gods enter the cycle of reincarnation anymore, I will leave too. Han Fei nodded slightly. With a thought from him, the river no longer absorbed divinity and laws from Chen Lingsu. As for Han Fei, he didn't waste any more time. He jumped into the river, came to the bottom of the bridge, completely immersed in the water, and began to bathe and cultivate. Since his law stacking could broaden the path of reincarnation, in order to release the souls of this massive number of creatures, he naturally began to stack laws. Besides, his original law had been established. It was time for him to break through to the late stage of the immortal level. At the bottom of the water, Han Fei felt that infinite laws were surging into his body. There were so many of them that the number and kinds of the laws were far more than he expected. No wonder. Han Fei immediately understood. No wonder eldest senior brother said that. After he established his original law, he could open the path of reincarnation. This was because once the path of reincarnation opened, he could stack the most laws in the shortest time. Feng Yu had previously bragged to him that there were thousands of laws to stack. But now, there were more than thousands. As more and more people crossed the green jade stone bridge, the power of laws in the river became more and more intense. Because of the clear flow of time, Han Fei could judge the speed at which he stacked laws. In just a month, the number of laws he stacked had reached 3,700. Han Fei was confused. This law stacking speed was too unbelievable. Just as Han Fei was about to continue stacking laws, he suddenly heard Chen Lingsu speak. "How dare you, thieves of the eternal race? How dare you enter the path of reincarnation? God-slaying arrow Chen Lingsu? Is the opening of the path of reincarnation related to you?" Chen Lingsu snorted. "Whether it has anything to do with me or not, since the two of you dare to enter the path of reincarnation, you're courting death." The two of them looked at each other, and one of them said, "Chen Lingsu, on this path of reincarnation, you and I both don't have any strength left, but we only have spiritual treasures to protect ourselves. How can you stop us?" Another person sneered. "Even if you're a godslayer, you're just an ordinary person now. We have divine blood bestowed by the Dominator on us. Even if you try your best, you won't be able to win. Therefore, I advise you to get out of the way." Interesting. Two gods, did you come here to die? At this moment, Han Fei's voice sounded leisurely. Han Fei immediately jumped out of the river and appeared on the green jade bridge, his eyes slightly cold. He saw that between the eyebrows of the two of them, a strange drop of blood was blooming, which could barely resist the suction power of the river. The corners of Chen Lingsu's mouth curled up slightly as she said, "These two people are probably spies who want to enter the path of reincarnation to investigate. If they are left to their own devices, they will retain all their consciousness and enter the cycle of reincarnation. At that time, they might even lurk among the myriad races. At critical moments, they will definitely be traitors." Seeing Han Fei jump out of the river, the two of them were immediately refreshed. One of them's eyes flickered. "Did you open the path of reincarnation?" The other person's body surged with divinity. They seemed to have plans to attack on the path of reincarnation. Han Fei thought to himself, "That's impossible. How can anyone who enters the path of reincarnation still have strength? If that's the case, wouldn't the Dominator of the eternal race be able to kill me in an instant if he comes in person? Besides, according to the rules he knew, on the path of reincarnation, their strength would be completely suppressed. At most, they could retain a trace of divinity. In other words, there was something wrong with the 2 drops of blood between their eyebrows." With a thought from Han Fei, the river under the bridge surged and rolled towards the two of them. However, under the scouring of the river, the 2 drops of blood actually erupted with dazzling light. It seemed to be a law that could resist the rules of the path of reincarnation. The two of them were shocked at first, but then overjoyed. One of them sneered. "Since you know our background, you should know that the bloodline divine tree is comparable to the path of reincarnation. No matter who you are. You want to destroy us with the rules? Dream on. Let's go." The two of them ignored Han Fei's attack and rushed onto the green jade stone bridge. Han Fei was puzzled. As the master of the path of reincarnation, doesn't he deserve some respect? When you were alive, you were gods. But don't you see what this place is? After you die, you still want to behave arrogantly and even attempt to break into the path of reincarnation? This is a little ridiculous. Of course, he knew that the bloodline divine tree was also quite extraordinary, but after all, the bloodline divine tree was just a substitute for the path of reincarnation. Even if he couldn't completely control the path of reincarnation now, could the rules of a substitute really resist the basic rules of the path of reincarnation? The moment the two of them stepped on the green jade stone bridge, their reflections were branded in the river. Han Fei could feel a large amount of the power of the law being washed by the river. When they were halfway across the green jade stone bridge, the blood bead dimmed a little, but this thing didn't seem to be low-leveled. Han Fei's face changed slightly. He really couldn't resist it? In that case, if that Dominator-level powerhouse of the eternal race came, wouldn't he be unable to stop him at all? The two of them descended the steps, and the power of the blood bead was only reduced by about half. Immediately, Han Fei couldn't sit still anymore. How could he let this happen? Although he didn't mind a god-level soul body walking through the path of reincarnation with complete memories, this definitely didn't include the eternal race. When the two of them were only 2 or 3 steps away from the ground, Han Fei finally took action. On the path of reincarnation, the power of all creatures was suppressed, but he was an exception. At that moment, Han Fei activated his original Great Tao and the Ragnarok, trying to penetrate their souls. However, Han Fei was shocked to find that his strength couldn't shake the two of them. His strength was completely blocked by the divinity in the 2 drops of blood. Huh? The two of them looked nervous at first, but after seeing Han Fei's attack, they were relieved. One of them said, "So you've only barely reached the combat power of a great monarch. You don't even have any divinity, but you still want to penetrate the soul of a god. You're really stupid." Han Fei punched thousands of times, but it was useless in the end. He couldn't even weaken the blood bead. One of them said, "Don't waste your effort. This power is the power of a Dominator. How can you, a half-baked great monarch, shake it?" The two of them looked even more relaxed. Although they were forced to enter the cycle of reincarnation a moment ago, they were worried that they would be killed by the guardian of the path of reincarnation. But now it seemed that this mission was unexpectedly easy. Besides, they had already memorized Han Fei's appearance. Once their memories were awakened, it would be only a matter of time before they found him. "Dominator?" Han Fei said ferociously, "Even if your Dominator comes in person, he'll have to die here today." Han Fei waved his hand, and the law enforcement divine chain spiraled out. When the law enforcement divine chain appeared, the two of them finally changed their expressions. A fierce look flashed across Han Fei's face. "It's good that you know. Since you can block the path of reincarnation, let's see if you can block the law enforcement divine chain. Confinement. Anyone who was imprisoned by the law enforcement divine chain couldn't break free unless they were found innocent. Their body and soul would be completely imprisoned. On the path of reincarnation, even a god's combat power was basically suppressed. It was almost impossible to avoid the law enforcement divine chain. Therefore, when the law enforcement divine chain appeared, their expressions changed drastically. The law enforcement divine chain didn't care if they were gods or ordinary people. It directly rolled up, not allowing the two of them to resist at all. Han Fei sneered. "So what if you're gods? Since you dare to mess around on my Path of reincarnation, be prepared to die. Buzz. The creation divine prison immediately appeared above their heads. However, when Han Fei saw the verdict that was shown by the creation divine prison, he couldn't help but gape slightly. Han Fei's voice was majestic. I am the guardian of the divine prison, Han Fei, the god Bei Mu, the god Qian Shi. The two of you are sinners of the eternal race. You stole the fruit of the divine tribulation of all races, and betrayed and coerced all races. You shall be sentenced to death. Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little excited. As expected of the creation divine prison. These people might have had other sins, but the creation divine prison didn't elaborate. They were directly sentenced to death. This was its punishment for traitors. Without giving the two gods a chance to object, two blood-colored pillars of light descended from the creation divine prison and enveloped the two gods. The remnant souls of these two people were disassembling at a visible speed, until they completely disappeared from the bridge. Han Fei was slightly relieved. Fortunately, the creation divine prison was in his hands. Otherwise, he really couldn't do anything to the two gods. However, this greatly increased his confidence. At least on the path of reincarnation, he was absolutely invincible. Even a god-slaying level powerhouse couldn't resist him. But if it was a dominator, Han Fei wasn't sure. If his enemy was really at that level, he wouldn't know if the creation divine prison could suppress them. After the two god souls completely disappeared, Han Fei didn't take back the law enforcement divine chain but said to it, now, I haven't completely controlled the path of reincarnation. Please help me guard it here. Suppress anyone with a drop of blood between their eyebrows like those two just now. These are all traitors of the myriad races. The two of them ignored Han Fei's attack and rushed onto the green jade stone bridge. Han Fei was puzzled. As the master of the path of reincarnation, doesn't he deserve some respect? When you were alive, you were gods. But don't you see what this place is? After you die, you still want to behave arrogantly and even attempt to break into the path of reincarnation? This is a little ridiculous. Of course, he knew that the bloodline divine tree was also quite extraordinary, but after all, the bloodline divine tree was just a substitute for the path of reincarnation. Even if he couldn't completely control the path of reincarnation now, could the rules of a substitute really resist the basic rules of the path of reincarnation? The moment the two of them stepped on the green jade stone bridge, their reflections were branded in the river. Han Fei could feel a large amount of the power of the law being washed by the river. When they were halfway across the green jade stone bridge, the blood bead dimmed a little, but this thing didn't seem to be low-leveled. Han Fei's face changed slightly. He really couldn't resist it? In that case, if that dominator-level powerhouse of the eternal race came, wouldn't he be unable to stop him at all? The two of them descended the steps, and the power of the blood bead was only reduced by about half. Immediately, Han Fei couldn't sit still anymore. How could he let this happen? Although he didn't mind a god-level soul body walking through the path of reincarnation with complete memories, this definitely didn't include the eternal race. When the two of them were only 2 or 3 steps away from the ground, Han Fei finally took action. On the path of reincarnation, the power of all creatures was suppressed, but he was an exception. At that moment, Han Fei activated his original Great Tao and the Ragnarok, trying to penetrate their souls. However, Han Fei was shocked to find that his strength couldn't shake the two of them. His strength was completely blocked by the divinity in the 2 drops of blood. Huh? The two of them looked nervous at first, but after seeing Han Fei's attack, they were relieved. One of them said, "So you've only barely reached the combat power of a great monarch. You don't even have any divinity, but you still want to penetrate the soul of a god. You're really stupid." Han Fei punched thousands of times, but it was useless in the end. He couldn't even weaken the blood bead. One of them said, "Don't waste your effort. This power is the power of a dominator. How can you, a half-baked great monarch, shake it?" The two of them looked even more relaxed. Although they were forced to enter the cycle of reincarnation a moment ago, they were worried that they would be killed by the guardian of the path of reincarnation. But now it seemed that this mission was unexpectedly easy. Besides, they had already memorized Han Fei's appearance. Once their memories were awakened, it would be only a matter of time before they found him. "Dominator?" Han Fei said ferociously, "Even if your dominator comes in person, he'll have to die here today." Han Fei waved his hand, and the law enforcement divine chain spiraled out. When the law enforcement divine chain appeared, the two of them finally changed their expressions. A fierce look flashed across Han Fei's face. "It's good that you know. Since you can block the path of reincarnation, let's see if you can block the law enforcement divine chain. Confinement. Anyone who was imprisoned by the law enforcement divine chain couldn't break free unless they were found innocent. Their body and soul would be completely imprisoned. On the path of reincarnation, even a god's combat power was basically suppressed. It was almost impossible to avoid the law enforcement divine chain. Therefore, when the law enforcement divine chain appeared, their expressions changed drastically. The law enforcement divine chain didn't care if they were gods or ordinary people. It directly rolled up, not allowing the two of them to resist at all. Han Fei sneered. "So what if you're gods? Since you dare to mess around on my path of reincarnation, be prepared to die." Buzz. The creation divine prison immediately appeared above their heads. However, when Han Fei saw the verdict that was shown by the creation divine prison, he couldn't help but gape slightly. Han Fei's voice was majestic. "I am the guardian of the divine prison, Han Fei, the god Bei Mu, the god Qian Shi. The two of you are sinners of the eternal race. You stole the fruit of the divine tribulation of all races, and betrayed and coerced all races. You shall be sentenced to death." Han Fei couldn't help but feel a little excited. As expected of the creation divine prison, these people might have had other sins, but the creation divine prison didn't elaborate. They were directly sentenced to death. This was its punishment for traitors. Without giving the two gods a chance to object, two blood-colored pillars of light descended from the creation divine prison and enveloped the two gods. The remnant souls of these two people were disassembling at a visible speed until they completely disappeared from the bridge. Han Fei was slightly relieved. Fortunately, the creation divine prison was in his hands. Otherwise, he really couldn't do anything to the two gods. However, this greatly increased his confidence. At least on the path of reincarnation, he was absolutely invincible. Even a god-slaying level powerhouse couldn't resist him. But if it was a dominator, Han Fei wasn't sure. If his enemy was really at that level, he wouldn't know if the creation divine prison could suppress them. After the two gods' souls completely disappeared, Han Fei didn't take back the law enforcement divine chain but said to it, "Now, I haven't completely controlled the path of reincarnation. Please help me guard it here. Suppress anyone with a drop of blood between their eyebrows like those two just now. These are all traitors of the myriad races." Han Fei left the path of reincarnation. When he reappeared in the graveyard of gods, it was already empty. Suddenly, Han Fei's face changed slightly. Chen Lingsu and the others were really bold. They let him enter the graveyard of gods, but didn't give him a way to leave it. Did they know that he could use the distanceless gate? He scanned around with his perception and found that Chen Lingsu's divine persona had disappeared, along with her bow. He couldn't help but wonder if one could take these treasures with them into the path of reincarnation. He didn't want their treasures, but he was just curious. After all, even if the bow was placed in front of him, he wouldn't take it. Chen Lingsu and the others had reincarnated. Once their memories were awakened, or they weren't asleep, they would definitely find a way to get them back. They had already made a creation chessboard for him. He couldn't even dig out their roots. Han Fei was about to summon the distanceless gate, but then he felt the summoning of the creation divine prison. With a thought, Han Fei entered the creation divine prison. As soon as Han Fei entered the creation divine prison, he suddenly felt that a door appeared at the back of the monarch's jail. Suddenly, Han Fei thought of something. Yes, when the creation divine prison sentenced a god, he could enter the second level of the creation divine prison. Before Han Fei could walk to the second floor, he heard the old man's anxious voice. "Han Fei, this door has been open for 3 years. Why didn't you come until now?" Han Fei immediately said, "Senior, I'm at a critical period of breakthrough. And very busy. I'm afraid I don't have time to chat at this moment. I'm going to make a breakthrough." "A breakthrough? Didn't you just advance to the immortal level more than 300 years ago? How did you finish stacking laws so quickly?" Han Fei said, "I got some opportunities." "Senior, why are you in such a hurry? To summon me?" The old man's voice immediately buzzed. "Let me out. The door is open. Let me out quickly. I want to replenish the power of the bloodline for the divine descendants." However, Han Fei didn't agree immediately. Instead, he said, "Senior, can you wait for me for a while longer?" The old man asked, "What do you mean?" Han Fei asked, "Senior, has your strength reached the god-slaying level?" The old man seemed a little angry. "After so many years in the creation divine prison, I've already gained many insights about cultivation. Once I come out, fast as 100 years, slow as 1,000 years, I will definitely enter the god-slaying level." Han Fei said, "Senior, then you haven't reached the god-slaying level yet. Right? Think about it. If anything happens to you, who will restore the bloodline of the divine descendants? Will anything happen to me? Who will know that I'm going to restore the bloodline of the divine descendants?" Han Fei said, "Senior, the creation divine prison has been exposed. No one is stupid. They know that the creation divine prison has the ability to restore the bloodline of the divine descendants. After you come out, if you rush to the West Wilderness in a hurry, it's easy for others to intercept you. After all, times are different. After you go out now, you might not even be able to tell the directions. Therefore, once something happens to you, the divine descendants will really be doomed. So, Senior, why don't you wait a little? longer? When I finish the breakthrough, I will go to the West Wilderness and help you solve the matter of the divine descendants. The old man fell silent, and for once, old fears didn't flare up. This kid makes sense. The old man seemed to understand the key. I can wait, but Han Fei, since the creation divine prison has appeared, aren't you afraid that you will be caught? Han Fei smiled. Then I'll send 2 gods to accompany you. After a casual chat with the old man, Han Fei left the creation divine prison. Although he didn't know what the sea realm was like now, it had been 3 years since the opening of the path of reincarnation. He didn't know how many people had transcended the divine tribulation during this period, but he knew that there would definitely be many. Therefore, it was meaningless for him to release a god now, and he couldn't control it. After summoning the distanceless gate and leaving the graveyard of gods, Han Fei promised to kill 30,000 ominous creatures and then entered his own origin star. As soon as Han Fei entered his origin star, with a crack, it seemed that some barrier had been cleared. At this moment, Han Fei knew that he had stepped into the late stage of the immortal level. However, the changes in his body didn't stop. Endless energy from his origin star surged into his body crazily. The spiritual energy, immortal chi, and chaotic chi here drilled into his body as if they were free. As soon as this energy entered his body, most of it was absorbed by his flesh and blood, and some turned into power to strengthen his soul. This absorption lasted for 3 years. On Han Fei's origin star, nearly half of the surging spiritual energy river had been exhausted, and the spiritual fruits here had all disappeared. At this moment, he was surrounded by more than 10,000 refined stars and hundreds of thousands of level 4 energy crystals. This was already Han Fei's last resource, to refine the stars. He didn't expect that his resources were almost used up. After all, most of the resources he had were snatched from the origin stars of great monarchs. In the past, this was indeed a lot of resources. However, he was only one step away from the great monarch realm now, so it was normal that these resources were not enough. Fortunately, he had a lot of reserves. When the last batch of refined stars was about to be exhausted, he finally stabilized the 100,000 laws. Gradually, Han Fei discovered that the superimposed laws seemed to have undergone a qualitative change. Some power at the level of the world origin appeared in his body. It was like a primitive land that was supported by world origin. Now, original power was continuously appearing in his body. Besides, his bone marrow seemed to have undergone a qualitative change. It could actually give birth to chaotic chi on its own. He didn't know what he was now. The bone of chaos? As the law in his body continuously produced original power, Han Fei felt that the entire origin star was trembling slightly, and the original power in his body was dissipating out of his body. That's not right. How can original power be born in my body? With the birth of the original power, Han Fei felt that he seemed to have been strengthened in all aspects. He couldn't help but look at his information, only to be shocked. Owner, Han Fei. Level, 118, Immortal level. Bloodline ranking among the clans in the Infinite Ocean, the 7001st. Immortal Chi, 129. Soul, 4999 Origins. Strength, 4999 Star Powers. First Spiritual Heritage, Origin Spiritual Heritage. Second Spiritual Heritage, Eternal Darkness Spiritual Heritage. First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Sky-Swallowing Fish, Level 118. Second Spiritual Beast, the Emperor Sparrow, Level 116. Main Art, God-Fiend Body. Well. Even Han Fei was dumbfounded. His basic strength had soared by 2,000 points? Had he reached the end of the immortal level? Han Fei knew that from this data, it could be known that it couldn't be as simple as him breaking through to the late stage of the immortal level. The resources in his origin star had almost been exhausted by himself and even gave birth to a large amount of original power. How could it be possible that he had only broken through a small realm? The immortal level cultivators would experience 3 changes. The first was that all laws would change. When the number of stacked laws exceeded 100, the laws would fuse, but it would be difficult to control them. Therefore, they needed to establish their original laws and use their original laws to suppress the stacked laws. Ever since he comprehended his original law, Han Fei had already known how to pass the late stage of the immortal level, which was to explore and perfect his original law. However, he was different from others. The original law established by others actually still had many gaps. However, he directly transformed the dew of origin into an original law. It was the most comprehensive original law from the beginning. This meant that he didn't have to be like the crown prince of the divine capital, who kept his strength at the late stage of the immortal level and slowly studied his original law. Therefore, the moment he established his original law, it would already be no problem for him to pass at the late stage of the immortal level. However, why did his body produce original power when it was supposed to accumulate strength? If the birth of original power was related to the original law, his body should have produced original power long ago, not now. Unless it was because of his cultivation technique. Sea of Stars. Han Fei took out the altar of the god of war. The fire curtain soared into the sky, and the god of war sent a message first. Han Fei, why haven't you gone to the West Wilderness yet? I heard that there have been several divine battles in the West Wilderness. Where have you been? Divine battles? Han Fei's heart stirred. Who fought whom? Who won? God of war, the gods of the Central Sea Divine Realm and the bandit god of the West Wilderness. I wasn't there, so I don't know the details. However, you seem to be targeted. Because I helped you, it led to the retaliation against the wild ancient race in the West Wilderness, their own territory. Oh? Really? Han Fei frowned slightly. The outbreaks of divine battles meant that the Central Sea Divine Realm couldn't wait to harvest the primordial divine race. As for why they were targeting the wild ancient race, because of him, Han Fei's face turned cold. His identity had probably been exposed. There was no doubt that there was only one person who could reveal his identity, Jiang Bai. Han Fei collected his thoughts. Senior God of War, don't worry about these things for now. I'll take care of them. Let me ask you something first. After establishing the original law and stacking enough laws, my strength has entered the late stage of the immortal level. But why is original power produced in my body? The God of War seemed to be stunned for a few seconds before he sent a message. Can you produce original power now? Han Fei nodded. Yes. God of War, it seems that in the past 300 years, you have stacked many laws. Do you think you shouldn't produce original power now? Han Fei asked, should I? God of War, under normal circumstances, only peak-level great monarchs or even gods can produce original power. The reason why you can produce original Power now is naturally because of the supreme divine technique. You came to ask me because you've actually guessed that it's the problem of the technique. Right? Han Fei thought to himself, it's indeed because of the supreme divine technique. So, late-stage immortals shouldn't produce original power, right? The god of war replied, of course. In fact, there are no precise small realm divisions at the immortal level. It's because the laws you stacked are conflicting, so it requires the establishment of the original law to suppress them. The entire process is clear. How can it produce original power? Han Fei asked, then what's my situation now? God of War, your current situation is special, not because you're special, but because the supreme divine technique is. You asked me before if the supreme divine technique was as simple as constantly compressing the star core. In fact, of course, it's not that simple. Otherwise, how could this technique become the first cultivation technique on the god role of the human race? The supreme divine technique can borrow 10,000 techniques and laws to help one cultivate. For others, only by fusing laws can they advance to the great monarch realm. However, for the supreme divine technique, there is another path. Another way? Han Fei opened his mouth. This was the first time he had heard that one could advance to the great monarch realm without law fusion. God of War, don't be surprised. The other path I mentioned actually contains the process of law fusion. Therefore, it doesn't abandon law fusion. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Isn't that more difficult than law fusion? God of War, no, it's simpler. Han Fei was lost for words. It contains law fusion and it's simpler? God of War, don't doubt it. The most difficult part of the supreme divine technique is to become a god. I've been stuck here for countless years. This thing is 1,000 times more difficult than law fusion. So it's only natural that it's easier for you to break through to the great monarch realm with this technique. Han Fei asked, then what's the other path? God of War, hee. We are different from others. Others borrow 100 million stars to provide power to their origin stars, but we constantly compress our star cores and strengthen our origin stars. Therefore, our origin stars are not comparable to other people's origin stars at all. Are you really not tempted by having such a powerful origin star? Huh? What do you mean? There seemed to be a hint of playfulness in the God of War's tone, which gave Han Fei a strange feeling. The God of War replied, have you ever thought of fusing your origin star? Han Fei. Han Fei seemed to think of something, but wasn't sure. Do you mean refine? Refine my ass. Fuse it. Buzz. Han Fei felt his scalp tingle. It was such a crazy idea to fuse his origin star that he had been building all his life. Han Fei fell silent and didn't respond until a long time later. Is it too late for me to switch to other techniques now? God of War, I knew you were thinking too much. When I say fuse your origin star, I don't mean shatter it and completely fuse it. Instead, I mean refining it into a part of your body, yet making it independent of your body. Han Fei asked, isn't that refining a star? God of War, that's bull's asterisk it. Refining a star is directly refining your origin star into a bead. From then on, it'll lose contact with your original body and can only provide a certain amount of strength to your original body. However, fusing your origin star won't affect the subsequent strengthening of your origin star. The two are fundamentally different. Han Fei asked, So, what's the benefit of fusing it? Han Fei said, with the star core as the core and the ground veins as the meridians. God of War, what if the ground veins and your spiritual heritage fuse, the star core and your heart fuse, your flesh and blood fuse with the starland, and your laws fuse with the heavenly Tao rules of the origin star? What do you think will happen? Han Fei felt his heart skip a beat, and his tone couldn't help but accelerate. The star is me, and I am the star. I can easily unleash the power of a star. Bead strike. I can completely mobilize all the power of my origin star, and my strength will soar. Therefore, the original power I produce can also be used to promote the growth of all things in my origin star, and my laws fuse into all things in my origin star. The God of War asked again, look, you're not stupid. Isn't this also a way to fuse laws? And it's stronger than pure law fusion. Han Fei's eyelids twitched. So, once I fuse my origin star, I'll directly cross the late stage of the immortal level and advance to the great monarch realm? No, you only need to fuse a part of your origin star to advance to the great monarch realm. Han Fei was shocked. Doesn't that mean that everyone can do this? God of War, are their origin stars as strong as ours? Their path is to constantly mold stars and provide power to their origin stars. We are different. Our origin stars are countless times stronger than theirs. Hearing what the God of War said, Han Fei understood. There was nothing wrong with what he said. The God of War put on a praising smile and said, however, in my opinion, this doesn't mean much to you. Even if you advance to the peak of the great monarch realm, so what? The bottleneck of the supreme divine technique isn't herein the first place, but how to become a god. Han Fei said, I'll consider becoming a god only after I become a peak level great monarch. It's meaningless to think about this now. Then how should I fuse my origin star, Senior God of War? Do you want me to feed rice into your mouth? Han Fei said, when I become a god, I'll feed it back to you, Senior God of War. God of War. The God of War was silent for a few seconds. Everyone has different ways of fusing their origin stars. Mine is to mold the ground veins into a weapon and fuse it with myself as a tool, but this might not be the best way. You can study it yourself. Han Fei frowned slightly. He didn't really want to ask the God of War about the way to fuse with his origin star. In fact, he already had an idea in his heart. He just wanted to learn some experience from the God of War. However, the God of War's answer was completely different from his train of thought. Seeing that Han Fei was silent, the God of War changed the topic. Why don't you go to the West Wilderness first? Fusing your origin star can't be done overnight. It took me more than 30,000 years. Han Fei said, Senior, don't worry. I know what's going on in the West Wilderness. By the way, Senior God of War, do you know if there are any standards for the soul or strength of a great monarch? The God of War's response was equally fast. 5,000 star powers, or 5,000 origins of soul power, is the minimum standard for a great monarch. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Basic combat power? Of course. If a great monarch needs a secret method to improve his strength to this level, what kind of great monarch is he? What about the upper limit? God of War, 100,000 star powers, or 100,000 origins of soul power. How much? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Was 5,000 and 100,000 on the same level? God of War, generally speaking, the lowest limit is only for people who have just entered the great monarch realm and have reached the limit of their potential. After advancing to the great monarch realm and stabilizing their foundation, one can probably reach 10,000 star powers or 10,000 origins of soul power. Han Fei frowned, thinking that 10,000 was not a lot. The god of war continued, according to the degree of law stacking, the degree of law fusion is different. Most great monarchs' basic combat power will be between 10,000 and 30,000. If they unleash a secret technique, it can reach between 30,000 and 80,000. I'm talking about most people. When these people cultivate to the peak of the great monarch realm, their basic combat power can at most reach 50,000. It's almost impossible for them to exceed this number. Han Fei asked, what about a small number of people? For example, extreme Tao cultivators. God of war, extreme Tao great monarchs, just double it. The limit of the basic combat power of an extreme Tao great monarch is at most 100,000. So far, no one has exceeded 100,000. Anyway, I've never encountered one. However, the tolerance of an extreme Tao great monarch is much higher than that of ordinary great monarchs. They can carry a powerful secret technique and unleash 200,000 or even 300,000 points of power. However, to be honest, very few people can reach the peak of the extreme Tao. Han Fei's eyelids twitched crazily, and he immediately felt that his 5,000 level combat power was simply trash. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, Senior God of War, then you should have reached 100,000 basic combat power, right? God of War, hee, you'll find out when you become a great monarch. Han Fei thought to himself, is there a need to keep me in suspense? However, he didn't care. The strongest great monarch had 200,000 or 300,000 combat power. What about the gods? Han Fei immediately asked. The god of war replied, a minimum of 400,000, with no upper limit. However, you can't calculate real combat power with this alone. The strength has to be related to your great Tao, your laws, your cultivation techniques, and so on. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. He had to have the basic combat power first. Otherwise, with his 5,000 combat power, even if he could unleash 10 times his combat power, it would only be 50,000. Compared to an extreme Tao great monarch, he was much weaker. No wonder the god didn't even need to attack him. With a casual wave of his hand, he could force him to use the great Tao of life replacement. After chatting with the god of war for a while, Han Fei returned to his origin star, but didn't go to the West Wilderness immediately. The path of reincarnation had opened, and the great monarchs of the sea realm should have discovered it by now. Therefore, in the past 100 years, the capable, great monarchs would probably lie low and survive the divine tribulation before reappearing. Therefore, the people who were causing trouble in the West Wilderness were either great monarchs who were not at the peak or gods. He couldn't control the battles at the level of gods for the time being. He could control the great monarchs who weren't at the peak, but he wasn't a great monarch after all. Even if his strength had soared, he had to activate his original great Tao to resist an ordinary great monarch. Therefore, his current limit of combat power was that of an ordinary great monarch. With this strength, he would probably suffer a loss if he participated in the matters of the divine descendants. Therefore, as soon as he entered his origin star, Han Fei immediately sat cross-legged and began to fuse with his origin star. The best way was to really fuse with his origin star. As for how to fuse with it, he had mastered the law of life, so he could actually give the star life. At that time, he could use his origin spiritual heritage to interweave the life power of the star ground veins and achieve a life resonance, which was equivalent to slowly transforming into the star itself. If Han Fei guessed right, the god of war should want to do the same, but he hadn't mastered the great Tao of life, so he couldn't do it at all. Han Fei didn't delay. He had left the sea realm for too long and was extremely short of resources. He had to improve his strength and leave his origin star quickly. However, Han Fei didn't dare to fuse with the star core at first. The star core of his origin star had been compressed for countless years, and its power was already extremely terrifying. With his current physical state, he definitely couldn't withstand it. Therefore, he could only start from the ground veins first. When he was in the star transformation stage, the ground veins were molded based on his spiritual heritages. Therefore, when Han Fei injected a tremendous amount of vitality into the ground veins, in a moment, the ground veins of his origin star seemed to come back to life. It was also at that moment that Han Fei could feel that his life was converging and interweaving with the river of life in his origin star. At that moment, Han Fei's consciousness fused with his origin star and turned into the law of the heavenly Tao. And the original power born in his body began to dissipate from his body. In the blink of an eye, everything grew. His origin star seemed to be active and began to automatically absorb the power of chaos from the sea of stars. Fusion was a relatively long process. While fusing with the ground veins, Han Fei was the first to feel the effect of the great Tao of strength and the law of strength. This was one of the basic laws of the stars. It was precisely because the law of strength was everywhere that Han Fei entered the immortal level with the law of strength. He didn't expect to advance to the great monarch realm with the law of strength too. However, this was a star after all. It was not easy for him to give life to such a huge star. 1,000 years later, when the river of life of the last ground vein converged with the river of life of his original body, crack! A crisp voice sounded. Han Fei felt refreshed. The power of his soul seemed to explode and turn into a soul sea. Laws seemed to be penetrating his body. He no longer needed to deliberately operate the laws, but laws would be born with a raise of his hand. Clatter. In his origin star, the chaotic chi absorbed in the past 1,000 years, the nearly half-depleted spiritual energy river flowing on the star, and the remaining more than 10,000 refined stars and level 4 energy crystals were all injecting a large amount of energy into his body at this moment. In the past year, on his origin star, the spiritual energy river had dried up. Another 5 years later, the chaotic chi was drained. Another 13 years later, tens of thousands of refined stars were all dead, and the energy crystals were exhausted. However, this was far from enough. With a thought from Han Fei, he immediately appeared in the sea of stars, held the token, and shouted, "Old distanceless, open the door." The distanceless gate appeared and wrote, "Where are we going?" "The sea of stars is in chaos. I'm very busy now. Can you kill more ominous creatures at a time?" Han Fei raised his eyebrows. "The sea of stars is in chaos?" Han Fei said, "I called you here to kill the ominous. I'll increase the number to 50,000, but no more." Han Fei didn't mind raising the number for the distanceless gate, because he desperately needed energy crystals. After this breakthrough, all his resources had been squeezed dry. Only then did he know that resources were never enough. Now, he had consumed so many resources just to break through to the great monarch realm. What if he broke through to the god realm? The resources needed would probably be astronomical. Now was the time when he needed the distanceless gate. If he had another conflict with it, it wouldn't do him any good. Even if he couldn't kill so many ominous creatures, he could put it on credit, right? Anyway, he would have to kill many ominous creatures in the future. Hearing that Han Fei was going to kill the distanceless gate immediately opened. Swish. When Han Fei appeared in the sea of stars, he was dumbfounded. This was not any place he knew, but an ominous battlefield somewhere in the sea of stars. At this moment, on this battlefield, there were as many as 30,000 monarchs and more than 500,000 sky openers. In addition, Han Fei saw more than 500,000 prehistoric ancient creatures surrounding the law of time, including as many as 30,000 monarchs, 60,000 monarchs and 1,000,000 sky openers. However, opposite them, on this battlefield, there were as many as 2 or even 3 million ominous creatures. Anyway, at a glance, countless ominous creatures were withering, but this scene was really huge. Yes, this was already a large-scale battlefield. Although the scale was not as large as the place guarded by the hidden monarch city, it was not much worse. At this moment, the creatures wrapped in the law of time were at the forefront, and all kinds of purification techniques bloomed in the sea of stars. These ancient creatures were quite strong and fearless of death. With them at the front, they shared the huge pressure on the normal front line army. If the scene of millions of soldiers fighting fiercely was shocking, then in the distance, Han Fei saw a huge figure hundreds of thousands of feet tall, with 8 huge hands in front of him, each holding a blade that looked like a starlight. In front of him, Han Fei saw 2 doomsday-level ominous creatures. Yes, Han Fei was sure that it was a doomsday-level ominous creature. He had seen doomsday-level ominous creatures on the battlefield in the hidden monarch city. On another battlefield, Han Fei saw a female monarch standing on an ancient phoenix. But in front of her, in the endless time chains and time cage, there were 2 doomsday-level ominous creatures trapped. A divine battle? Even the Time Temple participated in the front-line battlefield? Han Fei couldn't help being shocked. This was also a battlefield guarded by gods. He couldn't help but want to take a look at the distanceless gate, thinking to himself, I only need to kill 50,000 ominous creatures, but you sent me straight to the front-line battlefield. Buzz. Few people noticed Han Fei's sudden appearance. However, the god-level powerhouse and the female monarch of the Time Temple both noticed him, including some great monarchs in the battle. The distanceless gate? The god was puzzled. Although the pressure on his front line had increased greatly recently, he didn't ask for reinforcements. Besides, even if you guys sent strong masters to help, at least send a few more, okay? There was only one great monarch, and his aura was so unstable. He seemed to have just broken through to the great monarch realm. The god shouted, You've just made a breakthrough and haven't stabilized your strength yet. Why are you here? Han Fei cupped his hands slightly. Senior, I've just made a breakthrough and didn't have enough resources, so I asked the distanceless gate to send me to an ominous battlefield. I need to obtain some energy crystals. Sorry to disturb you. The god, the other great monarchs here, and even the female monarch of the Time Temple were speechless. You came to the battlefield to obtain energy crystals at the critical moment. When you had just broken through to the great monarch realm and were stabilizing your cultivation? How many ominous creatures could you kill? How? Could 100 or 1,000 energy crystals be enough? The god frowned slightly, thinking that at least he was a great monarch. He was about to give out some energy crystals, but in the next moment, the pupils of this god and the female monarch were constricted in shock. The moment Han Fei finished speaking, he had already entered the battlefield. Not only did he enter the battlefield, but he also crossed the front line of the resurrected ancient creatures and went straight to the ominous army. The female monarch shouted, "Are you crazy?" However, the god didn't say anything, because he found that Han Fei seemed a little abnormal. His speed was too fast. He had just broken through to the great monarch realm and hadn't had the time to consolidate his strength, but in terms of speed, he had already surpassed many great monarchs. This clearly didn't make sense. Sure enough, in the next moment, a dense army of ominous creatures rushed over. 8 small vines extended from between Han Fei's eyebrows. Swish! 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 The demon purification pot's divine vines were like chains. Any ominous nailed through by them would definitely die. Demon purification pot? The god's heart trembled. He had heard that the demon purification pot had appeared, but he didn't expect to see it here. As for the female monarch of the Time Temple, her eyes lit up. Human Emperor Han Fei? She didn't know why Han Fei suddenly appeared here, but she knew that more than 800 years ago, Han Fei hadn't proved Dao yet. But in just 800 years, he had become a great monarch? No wonder. No wonder Shiman Linglan took a fancy to this person and waited for him for her entire life. Such talent is indeed extraordinary. As for the others on the battlefield, they were dumbfounded. They were not in the sea realm, so they didn't know Han Fei's legend. They were just horrified. Why did someone take the initiative to enter the ominous pile? Some monarchs recognized the demon purification pot and were shocked. Those who didn't recognize the demon purification pot were even more shocked. Han Fei sat cross-legged. In the blink of an eye, hundreds of energy crystals were sucked to his side. Huff. When the chaotic chi and ownerless souls in the energy crystals surged into his body crazily, Han Fei finally took a breath of relief. Energy crystals surrounded Han Fei one after another. Roar. Kill him. The 2 doomsday-level ominous creatures that were fighting the god roared in succession. Doomsday-level ominous creatures were already gods in terms of strength. They were no longer unconscious ominous creatures. They might even know the secrets behind the ominous. Therefore, when they saw the demon purification pot appear, they desperately sent a large number of ominous creatures to pounce at Han Fei. This was because they knew that the demon purification pot was not complete yet. With the advantage in number, it was completely possible for them to crush Han Fei. However, the 2 doomsday-level ominous creatures, including the world-ending level ominous creatures equivalent to great monarchs, had no intention of charging at Han Fei in person. At least, when the demon purification pot was at its strongest, they were not stupid and knew that they would be courting death if they went there. A large number of corruption level, terrifying level, and destruction level ominous creatures rushed at Han Fei as if they were not afraid of death. Puff. 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 Ominous creatures were pierced and turned into energy crystals one after another. At that moment, there were probably hundreds of thousands of ominous creatures surrounding Han Fei on this battlefield. Ordinary people couldn't see Han Fei at all. They only knew that he had been drowned and were utterly shocked. In just an hour, as many as 50,000 ominous creatures had turned into energy crystals. Because not all the ominous creatures besieging Han Fei were destruction level, including a large number of corruption level and terrifying level ominous creatures, the demon purification pot didn't stop killing. Seeing this, the expressions of the god-level powerhouses and the female monarch of the Time Temple changed. The demon purification pot hadn't been fully restored. Although its combat power was powerful, there would always be a time when its strength was exhausted. Han Fei was surrounded by so many ominous creatures, so they certainly couldn't sit idle. Although Han Fei accidentally broke into this place, as the owner of the demon purification pot, he was destined to be extraordinary. It would be a pity if such a person died here before he grew up. Immediately, the god exerted his strength and slashed out a flashing knife net with the star-long knife. The divinity in his body spewed out, and the laws of the heavens flowed parallel, directly turning this place into a god's knife domain. Instantly, a doomsday-level ominous creature was shattered by the interweaving purification knife light. The female monarch of the Time Temple also began to reel in the net. Behind her, a time tide rolled. From the tide, an abyss opened its mouth and covered the time cage. 2 doomsday-level ominous creatures disappeared under this huge abyssal mouth. The female monarch said to Han Fei via voice transmission at the same time, "Hold on." In fact, both this god and the female monarch of the Time Temple had the means to kill doomsday-level ominous creatures. However, they were unwilling to kill them. This was because this was a protracted war. If one was killed, another would appear from the ominous to maintain the balance of this battlefield. If the two parties fought too fiercely and the myriad races killed the doomsday-level ominous creatures in a row, it was very likely to turn this ordinary battlefield into a super-large battlefield. Then, they would have to ask for reinforcements from other battlefields. Therefore, unless it was absolutely necessary, the god here was unwilling to break the balance here. However, Han Fei said leisurely, "Don't worry about me." Huh? The 8 small vines of the demon purification pot pierced through many world-ending level ominous creatures again with puffs. And these penetrating ominous creatures miraculously failed to regenerate. Can the demon purification pot still work? No, the law of life there has disappeared. The god was the first to react. It seemed that the area where Han Fei was couldn't be connected to the river of life. Therefore, as long as these ominous creatures were pierced by the demon purification pot, they couldn't revive. The law of life? The god was shocked. This was the first time in his life that he had seen someone walk this law. Could the river of life be related to laws? As for the water monarch of the Time Temple, she was shocked. The law of life? How did this guy do it? It wasn't that no one in the Time Temple tried to master the law of life, but no one could reach the river of origin, so they felt that the law of life was a law that was impossible to master. However, today, she was shocked. No wonder this person could become a disciple of the Void Temple. Sure enough, everyone who became a disciple of the Void Temple was extraordinary. 1. Puff. 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 In a moment, thousands of ominous creatures were penetrated and turned into energy crystals. Han Fei thought that he could continue to fight for 3 days and 3 nights. However, at that moment, in the ominous mist, several huge sharp claws extended out. The expression of the god here changed. Not good. In the mist, a higher level. Ominous creature has noticed the changes here. The female monarch of the Time Temple shouted, "Everyone, retreat within the front line." Then, the huge mouth in time spewed out a terrifying power dozens of times stronger than star explosion, which went straight at the terrifying claw and blew up tens of thousands of ominous creatures along the way. As for the god, he slashed 8 times in a row, directly piercing through the circle of ominous creatures that wrapped Han Fei. He shouted, "Boy, leave immediately. Your existence will only attract more and stronger ominous creatures. I'll give you the energy crystals you want." The god threw a small world to Han Fei. Han Fei took the small world. Before he had the time to thank him, he heard the female monarch say via voice transmission, "Human Emperor, the ominous is counterattacking now. It seems to be powerful, but it's actually still at the level of testing. They are testing the combat power of the defense line on the battlefield of the myriad races. Your appearance broke this balance. The ominous also has intelligence. With you around, the ominous attention will be on you. Therefore, you have achieved your goal. You can leave now." Han Fei was stunned. In the past, he had killed nearly 200,000 ominous creatures in the chaotic ice domain one after another, but no powerful ominous creatures came to cause trouble for him. Now, just appearing here had attracted an extremely terrifying existence. Although Han Fei was unwilling to give up, he still stopped. With a few flashes, he left the battlefield. In the next moment, the distanceless gate appeared in front of him. Han Fei cupped his fists. "Thank you for your generosity, Senior. I'll repay. You and I have a chance in the future." Without hesitation, Han Fei stepped into the distanceless gate. "Send me to the West Wilderness." Swish. When Han Fei appeared again, he felt a sandstorm, which made Han Fei immediately experience the feeling of the storm quicksand sea in the infinite mining area. However, this place was different from the storm quicksand sea. There were laws of wind and strength wreaking havoc in the storm quicksand sea, and there were all kinds of laws in the sandstorm here. Han Fei was lost for words. Aren't the living conditions in the West Wilderness 2F** King difficult? God knew where in the West Sea Divine Realm the distanceless gate had teleported him to. Anyway, however, there was no danger here. Han Fei had thought of going straight to the primordial divine race or the wild ancient race. However, the West Wilderness was in chaos now. Who knew how fierce the battle between the Central Sea Divine Realm and the West Wilderness was? The Central Sea Divine Realm knew that he would definitely go to the primordial divine race, and he didn't know the current situation of the primordial divine race. If he suddenly appeared and found that something had already happened to the primordial divine race, or that the Central Sea Divine Realm had already set up an ambush, it wouldn't be worth it. As for the wild ancient race, they were a race that he was relatively unfamiliar with. Although he knew that they were the descendants of the god of war, there were too many people in their race who had different thoughts. His sudden appearance would probably cause a commotion. Therefore, the best way was to come to the West Wilderness first to understand the current situation in the West Wilderness. However, before understanding the West Wilderness, he still needed some time to stabilize his current realm. his breakthrough was not over yet. In his origin star, 20 years passed in a flash, and only half a month had passed in the outside world. Unfortunately, he didn't have enough resources to upgrade the time chain. Otherwise, it would only take him 7 days to stabilize the great monarch realm. The god gave him 100,000 energy crystals, plus the ones he hunted, a total of 180,000. In terms of the energy provided by the energy crystals, it was completely enough for him to stabilize his realm as a great monarch. However, the chaotic chi and ownerless souls in the energy crystals were not completely used for his absorption. Most of them were consumed in the transformation of his body. At this moment, there were only 30,000 energy crystals left. And Han Fei finally successfully advanced to the great monarch realm. Sitting in his origin star, Han Fei was a little absent-minded. He used to yearn for the great monarch realm, but today, when he had finally reached this realm, he had mixed feelings. Unfortunately, when he came to the great monarch realm, the sea realm was already in chaos. The gods had already appeared, the ominous had returned, and they would appear forever. At this moment, Han Fei knew that the great monarch realm was just a hurdle on the path of cultivation. The god of war couldn't jump over it, but he had to. At this moment, Han Fei's body was not very stable. He wanted to get up, but the moment he got up, a deep pit was left on the ground. He could even feel that his body was emitting the runes of many intertwined laws at all times. When he looked at his information, his pupils were constricted slightly. Owner, Han Fei. Level, 119, Great Monarch. Bloodline ranking among the clans in the Infinite Ocean, the 4213th. Immortal Chi, 13. Soul, 20,001 Origins. Strength, 20,001 Star Powers. First Spiritual Heritage, Origin Spiritual Heritage. Second Spiritual Heritage, Eternal Darkness Spiritual Heritage. First Spiritual Beast, Twin Yin-Yang Sky Swallowing Fish, Level 118. Send Gift. Second Spiritual Beast, the Emperor Sparrow, Level 116. Main Art, God-Fiend Body. Gulp. So strong? Is this the power of a great monarch? Ordinary great monarchs only had about 10,000 combat power after stabilizing their cultivation. After that, unless they reached the peak of the great monarch realm, their combat power would only be like this. However, he had already had 20,000 combat power after only partially fusing with his origin star. What if he fused the Eternal Darkness Spiritual Heritage with the ground veins? What if he fused his body with his origin star? What if he fused his heart with his star core? As expected of the human race's top-level technique. What if this path is superimposed with the extreme Tao? Han Fei suddenly had such an idea, because the extreme Tao itself was different from the other Taos in cultivation. The cultivators of this technique endured more hardships, more pain, and paid more prices before they finally reached the extreme. In such an extreme state, if he could use the supreme divine technique again, Han Fei was suddenly refreshed. The basic combat power of the god of war definitely exceeded the limit of 100,000. An existence like the god of war would inevitably embark on the extreme Tao, and the supreme divine technique was most suitable for extreme Tao cultivators. Therefore, when the extreme Tao and the supreme divine technique were combined, it was the key to breaking the bottleneck of the extreme Tao. Therefore, the basic combat power of the god of war was definitely terrifyingly strong. Up to now, the god of war fought in the form of clones. The god of war's Consumption of resources was also shocking. His original body was clearly trapped somewhere in the sea of stars. So, when the god of war said that he could fight gods, was he referring to his clones or his original body? Besides, the cultivation of the supreme divine technique couldn't be stopped. The god of war once reminded him that when he reached the peak level of the great monarch realm and couldn't go on anymore, he had to seal himself. Then, what about the god of war? How many seals did he have? No wonder this old guy kept me in suspense. It turns out that the supreme divine technique can be so strong when one reaches the great monarch realm. Han Fei only knew that the supreme divine technique could keep making people stronger, but as they grew up, the strengthening didn't seem to be obvious. Until the moment he became a great monarch, he could feel more and more how terrifying this path was. Who below the level of a god could resist it? Buzz. Han Fei instantly appeared in the sea of stars, feeling the power of the law of space. His body suddenly swept out, and in an instant, flashed past billions of kilometers of void. 6,000 times the speed of light? The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched slightly, and he grabbed a dead star. Rumble. Buzz. Behind Han Fei, a divine halo appeared. This divine halo was filled with infinite vitality. Under the illumination of the divine halo, he seemed to be bathed in the river of life. No wonder great monarchs like to carry a divine halo. It turns out that it's a manifestation of their original law. As Han Fei activated his original great Tao, he felt that the laws here were suddenly absorbed, and his combat power instantly soared. 1 time. 2 times. 3 times. When Han Fei's body was strengthened 4 times, he felt that his bones were trembling slightly, so was his flesh and blood. Unfortunately, although my flesh and bones have become much stronger, they still can't withstand the full operation of my original great Tao. Perhaps it will be better when I reach my peak. The corners of Han Fei's mouth curled up slightly. For the first time, he felt unparalleled power. The great monarchs and those below the great monarch realm were completely different. When he was at the peak of the carefree level, although his body could carry 10 times his combat power and his strength could reach 20,000 star powers, he had too little comprehension of laws and hadn't fused them into his body yet. So even if he used all his strength, it would probably be difficult for him to injure a great monarch-level powerhouse. Now, Han Fei knew that although he still couldn't resist a god-level powerhouse even if he used all his strength, with the halo of life, he might be able to block a blow from a god. Feeling the infinite power in his body, Han Fei smiled. West Wilderness, here I come. Han Fei had never been to the West Wilderness, nor had he asked for information about the West Wilderness. He only knew that this was a place where bandits were rampant. The ferocious God Valley was also known as the home of tens of thousands of bandits. It was said that there was a bandit god guarding it. No one knew how strong the bandit god was. However, the Central Sea Divine Realm had once attacked the West Wilderness, but failed to change the situation in the West Wilderness. They couldn't even get rid of any of the top 3 bandits, which explained the situation. It was precisely because of the specialness of the West Wilderness that this place could be said to be a sinful paradise. Outlaws liked to hide in the West Wilderness because there were too many ferocious people. The strong masters of the West Wilderness were fierce and valiant. However, even if there were bandits, they had to have people come to the West Wilderness so that the bandits had someone to plunder. Therefore, Han Fei Suspected that the resources in the West Wilderness should be abundant. Otherwise, why would those people come to the West Wilderness? To drink the wind? However, when Han Fei stood in the sandstorm enveloped by laws, he couldn't help but be speechless. This was completely a boundless sea of sand. If this was the environment of the West Wilderness, wouldn't the people living in the West Wilderness be at least in the sky-opening realm? Of course, it was also possible that there was something wrong with the area he was in. Han Fei scanned around with his perception and then raised his eyebrows slightly, because this sea of sand almost completely blocked perception. Even if he was a great monarch now, he couldn't penetrate below a kilometer in the sea of sand. At this depth of only 1,000 meters, Han Fei perceived a large number of creatures. Like other seas, the sea of sand was also a sea. There were fish, fine shells, worms, crabs, and even unique golden coral creatures. Swish. Han Fei flew on the sea of sand for 100 seconds, but he didn't find anything, not even a bandit. Huh? Are there so few people in the West Wilderness? I didn't see many resources either. Han Fei felt a little strange. With his current speed, he could cross a very long distance in 100 seconds. Although the West Wilderness was not small, it was not impossible for him to find something. Just as Han Fei was about to take out the vast ocean navigator, he found a dead tree with clusters of green and black fruits hanging on its dry branches, like wooden dates. A demon plant? Han Fei rushed over. This was the only tree he had seen on the sea of sand so far. It seemed that he finally had someone to ask directions. The moment Han Fei appeared here, the green-black fruit hanging on the tree left the tree with swishes and shot at Han Fei like super beams of light. Huh? Han Fei stood where he was, but the sandstorm suddenly went berserk. The law of wind raged, producing law gale after law gale, shattering the attacks of most of the fruits. But a small number of them passed through the law gale, only to be entangled by flying sand and explode in the void. Yes, after stacking 100,000 laws, Han Fei had mastered too many laws of the world. In addition to his current strength as a great monarch, with a little activation, the sand and wind here could be used as his weapon. If it weren't for the fact that he hadn't fused many laws yet, he wouldn't even need to activate them. With a thought, the laws here would be used by him. An immortal level tree? Who would believe that this inconspicuous dead tree had reached the immortal level? The West Wilderness was only one of the 5 divine realms. Logically speaking, it should be the same as the East Sea Divine Realm or the South Sea Divine Realm. How could it be so easy to meet an immortal level powerhouse here? However, the tree in front of him was just at the immortal level. Besides, seeing that his round of attacks was ineffective, the tree immediately wanted to drill into the sea of sand. How could Han Fei agree? He shouted, "Sand cage." The surface of the sea of sand instantly condensed as if it had formed a thick ice layer. The dead tree's body was directly stuck, but at this moment, it was not without power to fight back. The cluster of fruits hanging on the tree suddenly burst out with the power of many laws, trying to penetrate this condensed sea of sand. However, how could the power of the immortal level shake the current Han Fei? As Han Fei raised his hand, the sand sea cage turned into a huge hand, raised from the sand sea, and grabbed the dead tree. Bam! 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 The dead tree also realized the terrifying danger and hurriedly detonated all its fruits. When it finally exploded the sand sea hand, it suddenly felt that Something was wrong and found Han Fei already sitting on its branch at some point. At this moment, information popped up in Han Fei's eyes. Name: Death Spirit Tree. Introduction: a sand sea demon plant that grows up by absorbing the nutrients in the flesh and bones of the dead. The dead spirit tree belongs to the myriad races. Because it nurtures the heart of laws in its body, it is often hunted by other races. Level 118. Quality: Ancient Mutant. Realm: Immortal level. Battle technique: Law Ray, Spirit Explosion, Death Envelopment, Silencing. Soul Burial. Collectible: Heart of Law. Absorbable. Note: the dead spirit tree is elusive and difficult to catch. This death spirit tree was in a panic. It wanted to run, but it couldn't. At this moment, it felt a terrifying gravity on its body, making it unable to move. My lord, please spare me. My heart of law is meaningless to you. Please let me go. Oh. You can talk? If it weren't for the fact that its original body didn't have eyes, the death spirit tree really wanted to roll its eyes at this guy. What was he talking about? It was an immortal level powerhouse after all. How could it not know how to speak? However, in the next moment, it suddenly felt the pressure on its body disappear. Although the pressure on him had been removed, he didn't dare to run. In front of a great monarch, he had no room to resist. Han Fei said, I'm not interested in your heart of law. However, since I've met you, you have to answer some questions of mine. My lord, please ask. This little demon will tell you everything I know. Han Fei sneered. Little demon? An immortal is never a little demon. Don't worry. I won't make things difficult for you. Let me ask you, where are the bandits and cultivators in the West Wilderness? Huh? The dead spirit tree was stunned. Don't joke with me. Who doesn't know that? Cultivators are all under the sea of sand? Under the sea of sand? Humph. Who's joking with you? It's my first time in the West Wilderness. Isn't it normal for me not to know? Tell me in detail. The dead spirit tree was puzzled. You're new to the West Wilderness. How did you get here? However, he didn't dare to ask. The dead spirit tree said, My lord, the West Wilderness is called the West Wilderness because on the surface of the West Wilderness, laws are raging, and not a blade of grass grows. There is only a boundless sea of sand. However, in the sea of sand of the West Wilderness, there are layers of underground spaces, which we call the Earth Sea. In the Earth Sea, there are abundant resources, many secret realms, and many opportunities. Therefore, countless adventurers came to the West Wilderness to explore underground, so many bandits were born in the West Wilderness. Wait a minute. Han Fei interrupted, since there are so many resources and secret realms, why don't the bandits of the West Wilderness take them themselves? The dead spirit tree said, they do. But the secret realms in the West Wilderness are more or less accompanied by danger. Isn't it better to directly snatch the spoils of others? If you explore the secret realms yourself, you're gambling with your life. But if you snatch other people's spoils from the secret realms, you'll have everything and don't need to spend time and effort. Of course, the bandits in the West Wilderness will also explore various secret realms themselves. Han Fei thought to himself, this is really the style of bandits. Robbery is indeed an easier way to gain resources. Han Fei asked, what do you mean that the secret realms in the West Wilderness are more or less accompanied by danger? Aren't secret realms all accompanied by danger? The dead spirit tree thought to itself, sure enough, this person doesn't know anything. It replied in a relaxed voice, my lord, it's said that the West Wilderness is the most complete ancient primordial land in the sea realm. Legend has it that in the primordial era, there was a god in the sea of sand, who released the boundless desert and turned it into billions of sand soldiers to fight the ominous. At that time, countless strong masters died, and along with this primordial ancient land, they were all buried. Therefore, the real West Wilderness is under the sea of sand. It was also the first time Han Fei had heard of the origin of the West Wilderness. He didn't expect there was such a story behind it. It was a real ancient primordial land. In the chaotic era and the primordial era, at that time, there were countless treasures, all kinds of powerful techniques, and countless extraordinary bloodlines between the heavens and earth. Therefore, those two eras had always been known as eras where treasures were everywhere. It was no wonder that the strong masters of the Central Sea Divine Realm and other places still came to the West Wilderness even though they knew that the West Wilderness was dangerous. Only a place like this that contained countless treasures could produce so many bandits, right? Han Fei asked, do you have a map of the West Wilderness? The death tree hesitated for a moment and then said, yes, but my lord, in the West Wilderness, maps alone are useless. Under the sea of sand, it's complicated. Besides, there are too many places in the West Wilderness that don't have maps, because in ancient times, too many large arrays were left in this area. Sometimes, even the bandits who have been living in the West Wilderness for a long time might not be able to find the way. For example, the uninhabited forbidden area, where there is a big array formed with the heavens and earth and there aren't any directions at all. One can only enter and leave with experience. And the death spiral, it appears from time to time. Few people who are sucked into the death spiral can return alive. There are also too many traces of battles in the primordial era sealed in the dead soul gobi. Countless people who went in to explore opportunities have died. Han Fei said, give the map to me. Okay. The dead spirit tree immediately materialized a dead leaf. Han Fei scanned it with his perception, and some places were marked by the dead spirit tree. Among the most dangerous places, there were the uninhabited forbidden area, Death Spiral, Storm Eye, Infinite Quicksand, Dead Soul Gobi, Golden City, and Ferocious God Valley. Han Fei looked at the map and found that half of this map was blank. No wonder the primordial divine race wanted to run to the West Wilderness. In such a place, it was even more difficult to find people than in the infinite mining area. The infinite mining area was dangerous because there were too many mine demons. But in the West Wilderness, there were all kinds of secret realms, sand sea giant demons, and dangerous places. However, on the map, there were some locations with a certain area. For example, some big clans. Han Fei saw the location of the wild ancient race. It was a place close to the dead soul gobi. The area was not small, indicating that the wild ancient race was very powerful in the West Wilderness. In addition to the wild ancient race, the location of the ferocious God Valley was also clearly marked. However, the ferocious God Valley was the center of the West Wilderness. Its status was just like the divine capital dynasty in the East Sea, the Phoenix divine race in the South Sea, and the insect nest in the North Sea. It was not something anyone could touch. Han Fei put away the map and nodded slightly. Not bad. Now tell me what happened recently in the West Wilderness. This time, the dead spirit tree said, My lord, our dead spirit trees hide from others in the West Wilderness and are rarely discovered. We naturally won't take the initiative to integrate into some races, so I don't know what happened in the West Wilderness recently. I only know that some god-level powerhouses seem to have taken action. Han Fei had long known that the god had taken action. He couldn't help but ask, You're standing so obviously on the sea of sand, and you said very few people have discovered you? The dead spirit tree said leisurely, My lord, because unless it's for a fight, very few people will come to the surface of the sea of sand. Han Fei was slightly stunned. If the West Wilderness was under the sea of sand, then the dead spirit tree was probably hidden quite well. Across the sea of sand, no one could perceive its existence with perception. In this vast sea of sand, it seemed quite difficult to find a tree a few meters tall. It was a coincidence that he met the dead spirit tree. Okay, leave. Han Fei didn't make things difficult for the dead spirit tree again. After all, there was no grudge between them. He was just asking for directions. The latter disappeared into the sea of sand with a swish, and then the entire tree turned the color of the sea of sand. The tree became as soft as a vine and quickly swam away from the sea of sand. Interesting. According to the dead spirit tree, the West Wilderness should be able to produce strong masters. After all, this place is extraordinary in the first place. It's normal no matter how powerful strong masters appear on this land. However, among the top 3 bandits of the West Wilderness, Zhang Nani was only a peak-level great monarch. This didn't seem to match the condition of the West Wilderness. This was a primordial land after all. Or could it be that Zhang Nani and the others all had the conditions to become gods, but they just stayed in the great monarch realm and refused to make a breakthrough like senior brother Azure Dragon and 5th senior brother? The more Han Fei thought about it, the more he felt that it was possible. Otherwise, it didn't make sense that the bandits led by 3 great monarchs could suppress all the strong masters in the sea realm to not dare to be impudent in the West Wilderness. On the map, Han Fei checked according to his coordinates and found that he wasn't far from the wild ancient race, about a light year away. If he went at full speed, it wouldn't even take him a day to reach there. Of course, he could directly use the distanceless gate. However, the distanceless gate was a little stingy now. Not only did it raise the price, but it would also send him directly to the battlefield. Last time, he was lucky enough to be sent to a friendly god, but he still almost attracted some powerful ominous creatures. Now that he was already in the West Wilderness, there was no need to find the distanceless gate again. It wouldn't matter if it took him a few days. 5 days later. Under the sea of sand, there were always some sand pits that his perception couldn't penetrate. Besides, the world under the sea of sand was indeed as complicated as the dead spirit tree said, like a vertical maze. Sometimes, as he walked, there was no road at all. What blocked his vision was probably a secret realm, a ruin, an array, or some other danger. Under such circumstances, Han Fei had to turn back, because if he went through some places by force, he might reach another place. At that time, God knew which corner of the map he was in. In the past 5 days, Han Fei had encountered more than a dozen broken arrays and more than 100 dead ends. The West Wilderness is really a good place to hide. No wonder even with the Means of many strong masters in the Central Sea divine realm, they can't find the people they want to find here. Han Fei couldn't help but think that Lu Rimquang seemed to have accidentally entered an array and was sent directly to the West Wilderness. It could be seen that in the West Wilderness, there were not only chaotic space barriers in this area, but also many super teleportation spaces across distant areas. Fortunately, Han Fei was not in a hurry. The more dangerous the West Wilderness was, the less likely it was for the Central Sea divine realm to successfully cause trouble. 3 days later, a super worm hundreds of thousands of meters long roared and bit at Han Fei. Its mouth was full of dense sharp teeth, which was terrifying. But Han Fei didn't care. He held the map with one hand and muttered, "I went the wrong way again. I should have passed this road in a few hours in this direction. Damn it, I have to go back and walk again." The laws of the giant worm burst out, and its mouth covered thousands of kilometers of the void. Han Fei simply raised his hand, and a long sand knife appeared in his hand. Pfft! A cold light slashed across, and the giant deathworm was cut through from head to toe. Humph! Han Fei snorted. The countless sharp teeth in the deathworm's mouth were all broken, turned into a knife storm, and instantly minced its huge body into pieces. Han Fei swept past the place where the insect blood was spraying, extended a finger, and gently hooked it, directly taking away the vitality of the death worm. Bang! The huge deathworm turned into powder in the blink of an eye. Han Fei didn't care. He was already used to it. He had encountered hundreds of such deathworms in this area. Some were in the sky-opening realm, and very few were in the monarch realm. None of them had any specific consciousness, so they attacked him blindly. Another hour later, Han Fei finally found an unobstructed path. Yes, this is the right way. Han Fei smiled. After searching for a long time, he finally found the entrance to the wild ancient race. Finding the way could only be done under the sea of sand. Above the sea of sand, it was only the vast and endless sea of sand. He didn't even know the direction, let alone find the wild ancient race. After another moment, Han Fei was about to move forward, when he suddenly felt that something was wrong, because the surrounding laws were no longer chaotic, but had their own rules. An ambush. Han Fei had a strong feeling about laws now. He didn't stack 100,000 laws for nothing. The law here showed a pattern, which could only mean two reasons. Firstly, he was about to reach the wild ancient race. This was under their jurisdiction, so they certainly had to stabilize the laws here. Secondly, someone had set up an ambush here, and the array, they said, had emptied the chaotic laws here. Han Fei was more inclined to the second, because there was still a moment before he could reach the wild ancient race. It was a moment for him, but in fact, the distance between them was not short. Buzz. Realizing this, Han Fei immediately turned into a black fog and swam around. At the same time, in a relatively simple sand pit, two great monarchs were guarding it. They didn't find Han Fei, and Han Fei couldn't tell their specific identities. However, one of the two had strong sword intent, and the other's battle suit was engraved with various arrays and Tao patterns. How could the people of the wild ancient race be so exquisite? Han Fei didn't think so. Look at the god of war and John Naney. Neither of them could be dressed so exquisitely, so these two people were definitely not from the wild ancient race. One of them said, "Brother Tan, did you feel anything just now?" It was the person in the exquisite battle suit who spoke. The sword cultivator said slightly, no. Brother Mu, you are a master of arrays. If there is any anomaly, you should feel it most easily. Is there anything wrong? Maybe I sensed it wrong. No, you didn't sense it wrong. Suddenly, an abrupt voice sounded in their ears. Buzz. The two of them were suddenly alarmed. The sword cultivator soared intent. Soared to the sky, but before he could draw his sword, his body was pierced by a big hand. In an instant, his body seemed to turn into a dry corpse and lost its vitality. He felt that all his vitality was gone. As for the other person, he had already activated the array, but although the array was activated, he couldn't escape, because behind him, a blood-colored long knife pierced through his heart from behind. Around him, countless sealing spears appeared out of thin air. If it wasn't the god sealing spear, what was it? The two great monarchs were shocked at the same time. Who could appear beside them silently and instantly suppress them? When the sword cultivator saw the blood-colored broadsword, his expression changed slightly. Human Emperor Han Fei? Huh? Therefore, Han Fei knew that the fact that Han Fei and Wang Han were the same person had been exposed. As for who the exposer was, there was no need to guess. It must be Jiang Bai. However, Han Fei didn't care much. Instead, he appeared openly and looked at the two of them up and down. It's me. I didn't expect myself to be so famous. The two great monarchs were shocked. Didn't they say that Wang Han had just entered the immortal level? Could an immortal level cultivator instantly suppress them? Han Fei said, just answer my questions. I hope to hear a satisfactory answer. If I'm not satisfied, you won't even have a chance to reincarnate. Their pupils were constricted, and one of them said, let's talk nicely. What do you want to know? Han Fei asked, which force do you two belong to? The array great monarch said, the Grand Development Sect, Central Sea Divine Realm. The sword cultivator frowned. Central Sea, heaven-worshipping palace. They were indeed from the Central Sea Divine Realm. Han Fei wondered if something had happened to the wild ancient race. But how could something happen to such a big race so easily? Han Fei asked, why are you here? The great monarch of the Grand Development Sect thought quickly. The creation divine prison was in Han Fei's hands, and Han Fei was also on the side of the divine descendants. If Han Fei was mentioned, he might be directly killed. Therefore, he said with difficulty, we're just ordered to guard here and check whether the wild ancient race has played a role in the chaos of the West wilderness or not. Be asteriskal shit. With a thought from Han Fei, the law enforcement divine chain immediately tied up the great monarch of the Grand Development Sect. The creation divine prison descended, and golden ancient words appeared. Han Fei glanced at him. Mu Tong, you have killed 901 strong masters of other races, killed 42 descendants of contributing gods, and deprived a race of their luck. You've committed heinous crimes. I find you guilty. You will be imprisoned for 420,278 years, burned by hellfire for 15 years, and whipped 6,800 times. Do you have any objections? Mu Tong's eyes widened. If you don't believe me, you can ask me again. Why did you use the creation divine prison so quickly? Han Fei sneered. Don't look at me like that. I gave you a chance, but you didn't cherish it. Do you really think I have to ask you to get what I want to? No? Let me ask you again. Do you have any objections? I have no objection. Of course, Mutong was not stupid. They, who had come to the West Wilderness, knew very well what kind of existence the creation divine prison was. Once they were caught by the creation divine prison, the best way was to plead guilty and never struggle. Buzz. Mutong was immediately taken into the creation divine prison. Only then did Han Fei look at the sword cultivator and say calmly, "You also have a chance." This sword cultivator great monarch no longer had any hope. This person was ruthless. Whether he said it or not, he wouldn't let him go. However, he clearly had the ability to kill the two of them, but he didn't. This meant that he didn't want to cause the roar of the great Tao, let alone let others know that there had been turmoil here. But whether he angered him or not, he had no chance to escape. And if he wanted to be discovered, he could only die. What good would it do him? He said, "We're here to wait for you." After saying this, he sighed in his heart. This guy had grown too fast. Now that he had become a great monarch and his methods were so terrifying, it was probably impossible for a great monarch to suppress him. The Central Sea divine realm was probably going to lose this battle in the West Wilderness. Han Fei nodded slightly. I believe that. My appearance means that the rise of the divine descendants is imminent. Therefore, as long as you kill me, you can stop the rise of the divine descendants. It's a good deal. Unfortunately, you underestimate me. Swish. The law enforcement divine chain tied this person up too, but this sword cultivator's crimes were lighter. He would only be burnt by hellfire for 3 years. Han Fei curled his lips slightly. If there was a chance in the future, he could use this guy. After dealing with the two great monarchs, Han Fei frowned slightly. Fortunately, he didn't come to the wild ancient race directly. Otherwise, he would have been hunted and ambushed as soon as he appeared. If that was the case, could the lava giant still be handed over to the wild ancient race at this moment? The wild ancient race. This was a powerful racial group composed of dozens of humanoid races, not just one race. There were giants, rock men, two-headed people, one-eyed humans, and dwarves here. And the largest race was the war giants. Yes, it was the war giants. Han Fei had interacted with them when he was young. But they eventually disappeared in the Time River. When he approached the wild ancient race, Han Fei found some traces of war giants. Their height ranged from a few meters to more than 20 meters. However, their strength was far stronger than those he had encountered in the Grand Myriad Mountains. If a super force in the West Wilderness was mostly in the Venerable Realm or the Sea Establishment Realm, it was far from enough. Han Fei discovered that all the war giants here who were more than 20 meters tall had reached the sky opening realm. He hadn't found any war giants below the Venerable Realm among the ones he saw here. Han Fei didn't know if there were any strong masters from other forces monitoring the war giants, so he didn't go there rashly. He gently broke through the void a distance away from the wild ancient race. Ordinary people couldn't sense the anomalies of spatial laws of this level. Even immortals might not be able to sense them. However, for great monarchs, this action was relatively obvious. Han Fei transformed into the former giant king. If someone perceived him because of this small anomaly or came over, he could trace their perception back. Under the divine concealment technique, even if the other party was a great monarch, it was impossible for him to find his flaws. He would only think that Han Fei was a strong master of the war giants. If the other party wasn't an enemy, they would naturally be curious about his identity and come to investigate. Sure enough, the moment Han Fei made a noise, dozens of perceptions immediately swept over. Han Fei's heart stirred. Do the wild ancient race have so many great monarchs? There were a total of 22 perceptions. Han Fei quickly looked back along these perceptions and saw great monarchs looking at him. Among them, there were 12 great monarchs of the war giants alone. The others were all great monarchs of various humanoid races. Who is it? Swish. 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 3 figures appeared in front of Han Fei in the blink of an eye. They were 3 war giants, each 40 meters tall. All 3 of them were holding battle axes. Perhaps for giants, battle axes were more combative. Han Fei cupped his hands. Can I talk to you in private? Why should we talk to you? Is the heaven-concealing divine race already so shameless? How dare you pretend to be a war giant and appear here openly? Why? Do you want to start a war? Heaven-concealing divine race? Han Fei was dumbfounded. Heaven-concealing divine race, and heaven-concealing divine technique, how could there be such a coincidence? Were the heaven-concealing divine technique and the divine concealment technique, he deduced, were both divine techniques of the heaven-concealing divine race? Han Fei said, I'm serious. Let's talk in private. I'm not from the heaven-concealing divine race. On the opposite side, a war giant hummed. In the territory of our wild ancient race, we don't need to talk in private. If you have anything to say, say it quickly. Also, change your appearance immediately. Our wild ancient race doesn't have a great monarch like you. Han Fei thought to himself, giants are sometimes not very smart. However, as Han Fei issued an order in his heart, many perceptions from the wild ancient race were blocked by his laws. The 3 war giants' faces changed slightly, and Han Fei quickly said, I am Han Fei. With that, Han Fei retracted the power of the law, because he saw that dozens of great monarchs had already stepped into the void. If he moved again, he might be besieged. That's bulls asterisk it. Why don't you say that you are the god of war? Brothers, beat him up. Han Fei? Han Fei was dumbfounded. The 3 great monarchs on the opposite side had already slashed at him. Han Fei thought to himself, that shouldn't be the case. With my relationship with the god of war, why would the race of the god of war attack me? However, the 3 people on the opposite side were really slashing at him. And Han Fei immediately retreated. The void exploded, and more than a dozen great monarchs surrounded him. A fist light blasted out from under Han Fei. Han Fei put his hands together and activated his original Great Tao. Instantly, his combat power was increased by 4 times, and he went all out. Boom. However, even though his combat power had been increased to the limit, he was still sent flying to the surface of the sea of sand by the strange power of the fist light. Bang. Cough, cough. F*CK, the power of one punch is comparable to my full-strength blow? In the next moment, Han Fei was blasted to the boundless desert on the surface of the West Wilderness. Tens of thousands of huge fist lights blasted out from under the sea of sand. Han Fei immediately activated the art of invincibility and punched at the fist marks. Boom boom boom. Boom boom boom. A war giant roared, ridiculous. His combat power is almost at the peak of the extreme Tao. Han Fei, my ass. A dwarf swung his hammer at Han Fei as if a star had appeared on the surface of the sea of sand. Han Fei was also a little angry. He had thought that he could just secretly announce his name, but these B** stars just came up and attacked him. Do you think I can't deal with you? Han Fei extended his hand, and a giant hammer appeared. The ultimate hammer. Struck 10,000 times in an instant, directly blowing up the star-like hammer, setting off a storm of sand within 1,000,000 kilometers. However, when he blew up the giant hammer, his hands were trembling. What a terrifying hammer. Its power was no weaker than the punch just now. Yes, the other party were all body cultivators. To be able to walk the path of body cultivation to the great monarch realm, none of them were normal. Their combat power was all off the charts. As soon as Han Fei dealt with the impact of the giant hammer, 2 battle axes slashed at him from behind. Although they were not as powerful as the punch and hammer just now, they definitely exceeded the combat power of ordinary great monarchs as described by the god of war. Han Fei turned around and punched twice, only using his physical strength. Boom! Boom! In an instant, sand spurted out, clearing the sandstorm for hundreds of thousands of kilometers in this endless sea of sand. And above his head, another broadsword, fused with the power of many laws, slashed down with sandstorms. At that moment, Han Fei's invincible golden body put its hands together and withstood the attack. It opened its mouth and spewed out a broadsword beam of strength law that slashed into the sky. The great monarchs who besieged Han Fei were all shocked. Someone looked solemn. This person's body was so strong that such a killer move failed to break his body. Someone's face changed. The path of invincibility? 7 or 8 people began to besiege him one after another. Outside the battlefield, there were 3 war giants watching, seeming to be discussing something. Someone clicked his tongue. This person's combat power is not bad. Although he used a secret technique, there aren't many people in the West Wilderness who can fight to this level. One of them said curiously, his combat style seems to be extremely ferocious. His physique is no worse than ours. Another person asked in confusion, is there such an expert in the heaven concealing divine race? Isn't their soul power stronger? Why are their physical combat power also so strong? This guy has even embarked on the path of invincibility. The 3 of them couldn't help but look at each other. Is he really Han Fei? Han Fei shouted, hey, are you crazy? What do you mean? I am Han Fei. I promised the god of war that I would come to the wild ancient race. How can you treat your guests like this? That's bulls asterisk it. You said you were Han Fei? How can you prove it? That's right. After the chaos in the West Wilderness recently, hundreds of Han Fei have appeared. None of them are real. Han Fei was dumbfounded. Hundreds of Han Fei appeared? F***ck, who had the time to pretend to be him? Buzz. Thunder exploded, and tens of thousands of lightning marks spread throughout the void. Han Fei appeared from a bolt of lightning and said, is this enough proof? With that, Han Fei raised his hand, and a divine fire altar appeared behind him. Immediately, a group of burly war giants said in surprise, ah. Is this one the real Han Fei? In the next moment, in the fire curtain, the god of war sent a message. What's up? Han Fei waved his hand, and some words were branded on the fire curtain. What's up? Dozens of great monarchs of your wild ancient race attacked me. Together, so I have to turn to you for help. Opposite Han Fei, the great monarchs looked at each other in bewilderment. Dozens of great monarchs attacked you together? There are no more than 10 of them in total, and you called it dozens? The god of war was probably confused too. He immediately replied, "That's impossible. Our wild ancient race is very hospitable and friendly to outsiders. Did you go to the wrong place?" The first 3 war giants hurriedly said, "Little friend Han Fei, it's a misunderstanding. Let me talk to old John." The war giant wrote on the fire curtain with his spiritual will, "Old John. I'm old 6. It's a misunderstanding. God of war, old 6? What did you do to him?" The war giant wrote, "It's really a misunderstanding. We thought that little friend Han Fei was fake. You don't know what happened recently, but hundreds of Han Fei have appeared in the West Wilderness, which has already caused many battles. Okay, you can rest. God of war, stop messing around. Han Fei, it's just a misunderstanding. After you're done talking, find someone to talk to me and tell me about what happened in the West Wilderness recently." Old 6 said, "I'll talk to you tonight." Han Fei retracted the altar with a stunned look. Instantly, the great monarchs, who were holding big axes and sledgehammers and looking fierce just now, had changed into smiling faces. Han Fei was lost for words. "Do you believe me now?" Old 6 laughed. Yes. We just wanted to test your strength, little friend Han Fei." Han Fei thought to himself, "I don't believe you. Was that a test? If I were an ordinary immortal level cultivator, I would have been blown up many times." Old 6 beckoned to the others, "Don't just stand here, or others will really think that something big has happened. Old Tai, Tian Gang, just stay here." Although they were curious, they still smiled at Han Fei and then slipped into the sea of sand. Old 6 laughed. "Little friend Han Fei, no discord, no concord. I am the current patriarch of the wild ancient race, Lu Tianming." With that, Old 6 pointed at the dwarf and said, "This is the deputy patriarch, Tai Sanchue." The dwarf looked at Han Fei with a smile and said, "Little friend Han Fei, I'm really surprised that you can take my hammer attack. Only an extreme Dao great monarch can take it. Little friend Han Fei, your strength has grown a little too fast." The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched, and Lu Tianming said with a smile, "Little friend Han Fei, your strength is indeed beyond our expectations. But fortunately, old Tai only attacked you once. Fortunately, you are fine." Han Fei couldn't help raising his eyebrows. "Only once?" Lu Tianming smiled and said, "Tai Sanchue certainly has 3 unparalleled hammers. The first hammer is the weakest, and the third hammer can shake gods." Han Fei. With that, Lu Tianming continued to point at the Cyclops and said, "This is Quan Tian Gang, the deputy patriarch of our wild ancient race. His star explosion divine fist is one of the strongest in the West Wilderness." Han Fei's eyelids twitched slightly. The deputy patriarch could already shake gods. Then what about Lu Tianming? When he was fighting just now, Lu Tianming didn't attack but just watched from the side. If he attacked, could he withstand it? Also, the old guy, the god of war, said that the strong masters of the wild ancient race were all weak. How could this be called weak? Even the deputy patriarch could shake a god. Han Fei cupped his fists. Greetings, seniors. Sixth Patriarch, what do you mean by hundreds of me appearing in the sea realm? Don't call me Sixth Patriarch. You speak as if there are 6 patriarchs in our wild ancient race. You can call me Patriarch Tianming or Senior 6. Han Fei said, Senior 6. Lu Tianming waved his hand and set up a ceiling barrier. Then, he said solemnly, little friend Han Fei, you might have been busy cultivating and making breakthroughs all these years, right? Maybe you don't know, but your identity has been completely exposed and has been used by others hundreds of times. Han Fei frowned. Use? It's just an identity. How can it be used by others? What's the point of those people pretending to be me? Of course it means something. Lu Tianming said, now, everyone knows that the creation divine prison is with you. The divine descendants are all waiting for you to appear and help them remove the bloodline restrictions on their bodies. Why do you think the people from the Central Sea divine realm pretended to be you? Han Fei's face changed slightly. Lure the divine descendants out. Lu Tianming nodded. That's right, but the divine descendants are not stupid. Otherwise, they wouldn't have survived to this day. Therefore, if anyone from the Central Sea divine realm pretends to be you, although the divine descendants are curious, they will probably test it. If it's an ambush, even if they kill themselves, they won't give the Central Sea divine realm any chance. Han Fei said, but pretending to be me has happened again and again. The divine descendants won't believe it anymore, right? Old Tai said, but not only are the people of the Central Sea divine realm pretending to be you, but the strong masters of the West Wilderness are also pretending to be you. The strong masters of the West Wilderness also pretended to be me? Why? Thank you for reading on myboxnovel.com. Old Tai bared his teeth and smiled. Of course it's to take the opportunity to kill the strong masters of the Central Sea divine realm. It's not like that. The Central Sea divine realm can ambush the divine descendants, but the divine descendants or the strong masters of the West Wilderness can't ambush them. Right? This tactic has indeed tricked many strong masters of the Central Sea divine realm. The corners of Han Fei's mouth twitched. At this moment, Quan Tiangang said, there are also some people just like you, who told everyone they were Han Fei. Our wild ancient race has encountered more than a dozen of them. Han Fei asked, why did they do that? Han Fei raised his eyebrows. So you all know that the 2 great monarchs are here? When Lu Tianming and the other 2 heard this, they couldn't help but ask nervously, you didn't touch those 2, did you? Han Fei blinked. Would you believe me if I said that I had taken them into the creation divine prison? The 3 of them. Han Fei knew that he was too impulsive. The wild ancient race was one of the famous super forces in the West Wilderness after all. How could they let 2 great monarchs block their door? Now that these 2 people had been taken in by him, the Central Sea divine realm might not notice it for the time being, but as time passed, they would definitely find out. Lu Tianming and the other 2 were speechless, but at the same time, they were also shocked. Han Fei had quietly resolved 2 great monarchs at such a close distance. They seemed to have underestimated Han Fei's strength. Lu Tianming said, forget it. Just 2 great monarchs. It's not a big deal. All of us thought that you would go to the divine descendants first, but you came to our wild ancient race first. Han Fei was puzzled. I was just afraid that the Central Sea divine realm would set up an ambush or something. Once they intercept me, it will be Difficult for me to recover the divine descendant's bloodline. Therefore, I came to the wild ancient race first. While bringing the lava giants here, I can also get to know about the current situation in the West Wilderness. Lu Tianming shook his head slightly. The current situation in the West Wilderness is extremely chaotic. You should know that there have been several divine battles in the West Wilderness, right? Han Fei nodded. It was indeed not difficult to know about the occurrence of divine battles. Lu Tianming continued, but I guess you don't know that the divine battles involve the checks and balances of the 4 divine realms on the Central Sea. Divine realm. Otherwise, if all the gods of the Central Sea divine realm enter the West Wilderness, who can protect the divine descendants? The 4 divine realms keep the Central Sea divine realm in check? Has the layout of the sea realm been confirmed? Of course, of the 5 divine realms in the sea realm, the Central Sea divine realm has controlled the sea realm for too long. In fact, if it were any other power, after a long time, they would become like the current Central Sea divine realm if they had the Central Sea divine realm's power. It's just like how someone is used to being in a position of power, so it's impossible for him to allow someone to pull him down from the altar. This is a mistake that countless strong masters have made in history. Now that the Sea of Stars is in chaos, the 4 divine realms in the east, west, north, and south, naturally won't continue to let the Central Sea divine realm mess around. Han Fei couldn't help but ask, so, the 4 divine realms work together to restrain the gods of the Central Sea divine realm? But as far as I know, there are no gods in the South Sea or the East Sea, right? Lu Tianming shook his head slightly. Firstly, it's not only gods who can restrain gods. Secondly, since the 4 divine realms can control one place, how can they really not have the power to resist gods? Otherwise, they might as well let the Central Sea divine realm directly unify the sea realm. Han Fei's heart stirred. That did seem to be the case. In the infinite mining area of the East Sea divine realm, there was an existence like the god of light. In the South Sea, there was also a god of the Southern Dipper. There was no need to talk about the North Sea. Although he didn't know the combat power of Senior Brother 6 God, he could definitely shake the gods. According to Senior Sister Shunli's tone, they were just unwilling to break through to the great monarch realm, not that they couldn't. Han Fei asked, since the gods are restrained, does the Central Sea divine realm just want to use those great monarchs to come to the West Wilderness to kill the descendants of gods? Lu Tianming shook his head again. The 4 divine realms are only temporarily restraining the gods of the Central Sea divine realm, and only 3 divine battles have broken out. These 3 divine battles broke out because the Central Sea divine realm found where the divine descendants were. Therefore, if the divine descendants are discovered again, the divine battles will continue to break out. It's impossible for the Central Sea divine realm to give up, because they know that once the bloodline restrictions of the divine descendants are removed, what awaits them will be endless revenge. Got it. The primordial divine race and the people from the Central Sea divine realm were already mortal enemies. Before the ominous came, one of them would definitely be completely suppressed. As long as the divine descendants were not beaten to the point of being unable to make a comeback, the Central Sea divine realm would not have a day of peace. This kind of result was not what the Central Sea divine realm wanted. Therefore, in a sense, as long as the strong masters of the Central Sea divine realm didn't abandon the sea realm as their base camp, they had to fight no matter what. Han Fei thought to himself, then I'll definitely stand on the side of the divine descendants. He said, Senior 6, do you know where the divine descendants are? Lu Tianming shook his head. I don't know. Perhaps the bandit god knows, but he will never tell us. Tai Sanchue said, Little friend Han Fei, you might have to hurry up. The Central Sea Divine Realm has begun to ignore the rules. It's only a matter of time before the divine descendants are found. They have almost been dug out 3 times in a row. Han Fei frowned. Is the Central Sea Divine Realm really going to start a war with the West Wilderness? Now that the ominous has returned, why are they still so reckless? Quan Tiangang snorted. They are used to being masters. What are they afraid of? It's just a group of great monarchs. They don't care if those people die. Besides, because of the return of the ominous, the Sea of Stars needs a stable rear. Therefore, this matter is tacitly agreed. Lu Tianming sighed. Now, the Central Sea Divine Realm really doesn't care about face anymore. They have set up many means in a row. Firstly, they instigate internal strife in the West Wilderness and secretly support some bandits to cause trouble. At the same time, they have set up a high bounty. Anyone who provides precise information about the Southern Dipper monarchs or divine descendants will be rewarded with a nature spiritual treasure. Anyone who can provide information about those great monarchs will be rewarded with a high-quality nature spiritual treasure and various resources. Han Fei's heart stirred. Just now, you thought I was from the heaven concealing divine race. Why? Lu Tianming said, the heaven-concealing divine race is a race in the Central Sea Divine Realm that specializes in soul and transformation concealment techniques. They inherited a magical intrinsic technique called the Heaven Stealth Technique. This technique can simulate faces, voices, bodies, auras, luck, suppressing pressure, great Tao, and so on with the law of the heavenly Tao. It can also freely hide the true strength of the original body. Many people who pretended to be you were from their race. And if I've guessed right, these people have already secretly infiltrated the major forces in the West Wilderness, so it's extremely difficult to distinguish them. The corner of Han Fei's mouth twitched. He didn't expect the technique he cultivated to have such a background. No. Quan Tiangang said, although the heavenly hidden divine race can transform into others, their real combat power is not that strong. And we are all body cultivators. It's impossible for a soul cultivator to escape our eyes. Lu Tianming said, in addition to these 3 ways of invasion, the Central Sea Divine Realm has even directly launched a war. They have begun to wipe out many small forces in the West Wilderness, coercing and luring them to confess about the whereabouts of the divine descendants. Don't underestimate the small forces in the West Wilderness. The 3 bandits can't completely control the entire West Wilderness. Previously, the divine descendants have been discovered twice because of these small forces, and once because of a bounty mission. Han Fei narrowed his eyes slightly. Did the West Wilderness not resist? Of course we did. Tai Sanchue said, how can we let the Central Sea Divine Realm set foot in the West Wilderness so easily? In the past 300 years, the army of the Central Sea Divine Realm has been defeated 6 times. Now, we're just waiting for you. Just waiting for me? When Tai Sanchue said this, Han Fei couldn't help but feel that fate was so magical. Since he met Chu Hao, it seemed that he had already been related to The primordial divine race. Han Fei's heart stirred. In that case, he didn't need to stay in the wild ancient race anymore. The key was to go to the primordial divine race as soon as possible. Han Fei said, by the way, Senior 6, Senior God of War should have told you that I brought the lava giants. They have been in my origin star for a long time. Can you accept them without being discovered? Lu Tianming smiled and said, sure, there are just thousands of them. We have a way to settle them. Around Han Fei, a world projection descended, and the Grand Elder of the lava giants and more than 4,000 lava giants appeared on the sea of sand. At this moment, as soon as the lava giants appeared, they were overjoyed. Although the environment on Han Fei's origin star was not bad, they didn't feel a sense of belonging. When they saw the tall figures of Lu Tianming and the others, they immediately realized something. The Grand Elder asked, little friend Han Fei, who are they? Han Fei said, Grand Elder, everyone, this is the current patriarch of the wild ancient race, Senior Lu Tianming, as well as the two deputy patriarchs, Senior Tai Sanchue and Senior Quan Tiangang. Lu Tianming laughed. Old friends, you've suffered. The Grand Elder looked excited. Have we finally reached the West Wilderness? Greetings, Patriarch Tianming. Lu Tianming was also excited. The giants had many branches. It was not easy to find one more branch back. He said loudly, everyone, the wild ancient race will be your home in the future. In the West Wilderness, few people dare to disrespect our wild ancient race. There was a commotion among the lava giants. Although the environment seemed to be very poor, this was the kind of environment they should live in. After exchanging pleasantries, Han Fei bid farewell to the Grand Elder and the others, and there were only Lu Tianming and Han Fei left. Han Fei said, Senior 6, since the divine descendants are waiting for me, I won't stay here any longer. Lu Tianming asked, do you know where to find the divine descendants? Han Fei smiled and a token appeared in his hand. As the token was activated, the distanceless gate suddenly appeared in front of him. Lu Tianming was stunned. Distanceless gate? Han Fei smiled and said, Old distanceless, I'm going to the primordial divine race. I'll kill 20,000 ominous creatures for you later. However, a line of words appeared on the distanceless gate. Where is the primordial divine race? Huh? Han Fei's smile froze, and he said in surprise, I didn't know. The distanceless gate, I don't know either. Unless I've been there, or you provide me with an accurate location. Han Fei. The corner of Lu Tianming's mouth twitched slightly. Little friend Han Fei. You. Although the distanceless gate can ignore distance, it's not omnipotent. If it's so easy to find the divine descendants, they would have been gone long ago. The distanceless gate, is there anything else? If not, I'm leaving. Han Fei, well. Bye-bye. Han Fei was also a little stunned. He wanted to show off to Lu Tianming, but he was slapped in the face in the next second. It turned out that his vast ocean navigator was the most reliable. After the distanceless gate left, Lu Tianming said, Little friend Han Fei. You can actually go to the ferocious God Valley to take a look. After all, the divine descendants are waiting for you. Therefore, they will definitely leave some information for you to find them. Han Fei nodded slightly. In that case, I won't disturb you anymore. I'll go find it. Lu Tianming nodded and handed Han Fei a huge wrist guard. If little friend Han Fei wants to appear in the ferocious God Valley as a member of the wild Ancient race, you can wear this. This is a high-quality nature spiritual treasure personally made by Old Tai, the Star Explosion Bracer. It's branded with the top divine technique, the Star Explosion Divine Fist. In the wild ancient race, there are only 2 of this thing. I have one and Quan Tian Gang has the other. If you wear this, others will think that you are a disciple of one of us and won't doubt your identity. A high-quality nature spiritual treasure? Han Fei took the Star Explosion Bracer and cupped his hands. Thank you. Senior 6. Lu Tianming smiled and said, it doesn't matter. By the way, let me remind you, if you encounter bandits in the West Wilderness, you don't have to fight them to the death. The people of the West Wilderness have never liked to kill each other. You can take the bandits as a trial. If they rob you, you can rob them too. Han Fei raised his eyebrows. Really? What if it's someone outside the West Wilderness? Lu Tianming said, that's up to you. If you're sure that the visitor is not from the West Wilderness, you can kill him. However, if you tie him up and sell him in the ferocious God Valley, you can make a fortune. Huh? Understood. Thank you for your reminder, Senior 6. Han Fei left the wild ancient race, but the first thing he did was not to go to the ferocious God Valley. After getting used to the Star Explosion Bracers and mastering the Star Explosion Divine Fist, he began to search on the map of the West Wilderness with the vast ocean navigator. Perhaps the divine descendants would leave some information for him, but the ferocious God Valley was the center of the West Wilderness. Although he could pretend to be a war giant of the wild ancient race, it was unnecessary. If he could directly find the primordial divine race, why would he bother to go to the ferocious God Valley? When the bloodline of the divine descendants was restored and the layout of the West Wilderness was rewritten, he could go to Xia Xiaochan and the others to greatly reduce their danger. Otherwise, as long as the bloodline of the divine descendants was not restored, there would always be open and secret battles between the West Wilderness and the Central Sea Divine Realm, and danger would be everywhere.